Good afternoon. Oh. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Secretary, please take a roll.
Assemblywoman Backus. Assemblyman Carter.
Present.
Assemblywoman Duran.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi. Assemblywoman Kasama.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Assemblyman O'Neill.
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Here.
Assemblyman Urich. Chair Marzola.
And I am here. Please mark Vice Chair Howdigi present. Thank you, everyone that is here in Carson City, everyone who is in Las Vegas, and anyone listening over the phone lines. Today, we will hear three bills: Assembly Bill 198, Assembly Bill 432, and Assembly Bill 434. We will also have a work session. We will start with our work session this afternoon. Before we get started, I'd like to make a few housekeeping announcements. Please turn your electronic devices either off or on silent, whether your computer or your phones, please. That goes for my committee members as well. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door. If you have a business card, please provide it to the committee secretary. If you wish to testify and you have handouts, please provide 20 copies to the committee secretary prior to your testimony. For those testifying online, please be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize any background noise. When testifying, please turn on your microphone and state and spell your name for the record. I expect courtesy and respect in our committee. With that, let's move to our work session. Work session is to take action and measures that the committee has heard. It is not customary for the committee to take testimony or otherwise rehear the bills during work session. However, I may invite a witness to come forward for clarification or questions during our consideration of a measure. And with that, we will begin with our work session, Assembly Bill 270. I will turn it over to our policy analyst, Mrs. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 270 provides for the licensure and regulation of anesthesiologist assistants. It is sponsored by Assemblywoman Marzola, heard in committee on April 7th. There was a new bill page uploaded for the committee members in case about an hour ago that includes an amendment from Michael Hillerby with Comfort Kroll Law Firm. And that is to amend Section 7 and 46 of the bill to, one, add specific provisions to allow anesthesiologist assistants to possess and administer medications and enter verbal or written chart orders in a patient's record as prescribed by the supervising anesthesiologist, and two, reorganize and revise provisions governing the duties and responsibilities of an anesthesiologist assistant with respect to medication.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass of Assembly Bill 270.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigi. Is there a second? Second, Assemblyman O'Neill. Any discussion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. And I will assign that floor statement to myself. Next is Assembly Bill 298.
Assembly Bill 298 revises provisions governing housing. It is sponsored by Assemblywoman Howdigi, heard on March 29th. There are three proposed amendments by the sponsor, John Norman and Christine Hess. The first is to amend Section 1 of the bill to prohibit a landlord from charging an application fee or for credit reporting or background checks for any minors who are members of the prospective tenant's household. The second is to amend subsection 3.0 of Section 2 of the bill to specify the manner in which variable costs and fixed fees must be set forth in the appendix containing an explanation of each fee that may be charged during the term of the rental agreement and the purpose for which the fee may be charged. The third is to delete Section 3 of the bill. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just did want to thank Assemblymember O'Neill. The amendment number 2 came at his suggestion when it came to variable fees, how we would outline those in the appendix. And so, Assemblymember, I took your input and I did amend the bill to include that so that if a fee was variable, that it would be outlined in the property manager or the landlord wouldn't have to state a certain fee, and if that way it was more, they're able to recover those costs. So thank you.
Any additional questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass on Assembly Bill 298. I have a first from Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Is there a second? Second. A second from Mr. Speaker. Any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Vice Chair Howdigy.
Thank you.
Next, we will go to Assembly Bill 392.
Assembly Bill 392 makes various changes relating to property. It's sponsored by Assemblywoman Kasama, heard on April 5th. There is one proposed amendment by Mary Walker representing Lyon County, and that's to amend Section 1 of the bill on page 3, line 37, to delete clerk and replace it with recorder.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Assembly Bill 392? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 392. I have a first.
Second.
I have a first from Assemblyman Carter, a second from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Kasama.
Just remember to hit your button.
Next, we'll go to Assembly Bill 398.
Assembly Bill 398 makes various changes relating to insurance. It is sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. It was heard on April 10th. There is one proposed amendment by Justin Watkins with the Nevada Justice Association, and that's to delete subsection 2 of section 1 of the bill.
Thank you. Committee members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass of Assembly Bill 398.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there a second? I'll second. I have a second from Assemblyman Yurek. Is there any discussion on the motion? Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm going to vote this out of committee, but I reserve the right to amend my vote on the floor because I'm really struggling with the unintended consequences that will insurance, and we have a lot of mandates in statute for healthcare providers and carrying medical professional liability insurance that could be impacted, and I don't want a situation where we create barriers, so I'll reserve my right to change my vote on the floor.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Kasama? Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Assemblywoman? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Torres. Next, we will go to Assembly Bill 410.
Assembly Bill 410 revises provisions relating to industrial insurance. It is sponsored by Assemblywoman Howdigy, heard on April 10th. There are two proposed amendments by the sponsor. The first is to eliminate the amendments in Section 1 of the bill as drafted and instead amend subsection 2 of Section 1 to provide an exception from the provisions of subsection 2. And B is to amend subsection 4B to add a series of events. They're providing that an injury or disease suffered by a first responder caused by stress, for which the primary cause was witnessing an event or series of events described in subsection 4A, may be compensable under industrial insurance under certain circumstances. Also amend the bill to add co-sponsors Assemblyman Yeager, Assemblyman O'Neill, and Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Assembly Bill 410? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass. I have a first from Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. I have a second from Assemblyman O'Neill. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to Vice Chair Howdigy.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear Assembly Bill 410.
We just did 410.
Oh, I'm looking right at it, 415.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 415 revised provisions relating to dispensing opticians. It is sponsored by Assemblywoman Taylor, heard on March 31st. The Executive Director of the Board of Dispensing Opticians proposes 11 amendments, and that the first is to amend Section 3 of the bill to revise the definition of direct supervision. Second is to amend subsection 1 of Section 8 of the bill to add the issuance of licenses, and 3, amend subsection 5D of Section 8 of the bill to replace 1 month with 30 days. Fourth is amend subsection 6, Section 8 of the bill to delete the requirement that the regulations adopted pursuant to the subsection must prohibit the reactivation of a licensed dispensing optician if the license is inactive for 10 consecutive years. The fifth is to amend Section 9 of the bill to reduce the amount of the fee for an examination and initial licenses dispensing optician from $500 to $250. Number 6 is amend Section 15 of the bill to 1, allow for electronic verification and other methods of preparing work orders for ophthalmic dispensing, and 2, remove subsection 3C. Number 7 is amend subsection 4 of Section 23 of the bill to remove redundant language, providing an exception already provided for in this section. Number 8 is amend Section 24 of the bill to allow an optical establishment to remain open in the absence of a licensed optician, and require the establishment to post a sign notifying the public a licensed optician is not on duty. Number 9, amend subsection 3 of Section 25 of the bill to make a technical change to add applicant who submits proof to the board which shows to the satisfaction of the board. Number 10, amend Section 27 of the bill to 1, prohibit limited license holders from dispensing contact lenses or supervising the dispensing of contact lenses by an apprentice optician, and 2, authorize a person who holds an inactive limited license on January 31st, 23 to reactivate his or her license in accordance with the provisions set forth in NRS 637.121 as those provisions existed before the effective date of the bill. And number 11 is to amend Section 28 of the bill to revise provisions concerning the supervision of an apprentice dispensing optician and delete provisions related to limited licenses, the substance of which has been removed into Section 27.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Assembly Bill 415? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Assemblywoman Torres and a second from Vice Chair Howdigy. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Taylor. Next, we'll move to Assembly Bill 437.
Assembly Bill 437 limits the amount a provider of health care may provide for filling out certain forms associated with certain leaves of absence. This is sponsored by the committee, heard on April 10th, and there are no proposed amendments.
Members, are there any questions on Assembly Bill 437? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
Or a motion to do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigy, a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Is there any discussion on the motion? Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I have some reservations still on 437. I'll give it a yes, and we'll stay that way most likely, but I just want a little time to study a few parts and talk some things. So I just wanted to make that aware. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any additional discussion on the bill? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I will assign that floor statement to myself. Our last work session item is Assembly Bill 439.
Assembly Bill 439 revised provisions governing contracts of insurance. It was sponsored by the committee, heard on April 10th. Kaling Cardavani with the Nevada Justice Association proposes the following amendments: to delete sections 1 through 3 and 9 through 14 of the bill, amend sections 4, 6, 7, 15, 17, 19, and 20 of the bill to revise the language set forth in those sections to provide that any arbitration provision in the policy of health insurance and other certain insurances I don't want to read them all. It's not binding upon the insured or any dependent of the insured. And the third is to amend Section 22 of the bill to repeal only NRS 689A.0403, 689B.067, 689B.270, and 695C.267.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on Assembly Bill 439? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdiggy. Do I have a second? Second from Assemblywoman Backus. Any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I'll assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Backus. 1 minute recess. The committee will now come back to order. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 198, which revises provisions governing health care. Assemblyman Ornlicker, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to log into my laptop and I'll be ready. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. David Ornlicker for the record, Assembly District 20 in Southeast Las Vegas. And I'm going to be joined for my presentation on Assembly Bill 198 on Zoom by Haley Tansman and Quinn Sheehan, who are part of the Uniform Law Commission project for the Uniform Telehealth Act. And then with me here, Miranda Hoover and Art Savanak to talk about the nurse anesthetist provision. So I want to start with, well, as you can see, the title is, this is about promoting access to health care in Nevada, which is a serious problem. We don't have enough health care providers. We have problems people finding a provider when they need one. And both of these provisions are designed to address the workforce shortage. So I want to start with the Uniform Telehealth Act, and I'm going to start with the importance of telehealth. So maybe you live in an area where there's a serious shortage of healthcare professionals. In a rural area or sometimes urban areas have healthcare professional shortages. And so having telehealth improves access for patients who live there. Or maybe you don't have reliable transportation to get you to your doctor's office or to a health clinic. And you can, with telehealth, you can do it from your home. Or maybe you want to keep your healthcare needs confidential and not lose your privacy by sitting in a waiting room with other patients. Telehealth allows you to keep your confidentiality. Well, most of the provisions in Assembly Bill 198 are designed to enact the Uniform Telehealth Act. And this is an important proposal by the Uniform Law Commission to promote uniformity in state laws. In general, the Uniform Law Commission promotes uniformity in state laws on important topics, and uniformity will provide much value in the field of telehealth. If all states adopt this act, then you all and your constituents will be able to receive care from your doctor or nurse when you're traveling out of state. If all states adopt this act, then medical experts in our state will be able to provide health care to their patients who live in neighboring states. And I've heard from doctors in Las Vegas who have patients in Arizona and Utah how much this will help them provide care so their patients don't have to come in, drive 2 or 3 hours for every appointment. So let me start. So most of the bill is to enact the Uniform Telehealth Act. So let me go to my slides. So the first important part of it is you can establish a patient-practitioner relationship via telehealth. And actually, we've already enacted that. So this is an area where the Uniform Act overlaps with current law, and this is important because, again, if you're in a rural area and not having to make a trip to establish a relationship. But that's already an existing law. Second thing it allows it to do, so in general, sort of the baseline is telehealth is for a patient in Nevada and the practitioner is licensed in Nevada. That's sort of the baseline. And again, this makes sure you can do it without having to meet in person first. Now, what if the practitioner is out of state? So there's some important provisions to facilitate telehealth when the practitioner is out of state. And the first is to provide for registration. It's not licensure. It's obviously if they get licensed here, then they're able to practice in Nevada. But this provides for registration of out-of-state practitioners to provide telehealth services to patients while they're in Nevada. So if you're struggling to find a practitioner or your practitioner's moved out of state, whatever, we can register them. And this allows people who are licensed in their state as a nurse, a doctor, a psychologist, to register, and they can provide telehealth services from their home office to patients in Nevada. Registration does not allow them to provide live in person. They'd have to get licensed for that. But with registration, they can do telehealth from Utah or California or Arizona. Again, but no in-person care. It also allows unregistered practitioners. So if you're out of state, you're not licensed here, you don't file for registration, you can still provide telehealth services to patients in Nevada for a few important services. Consultations. A doctor here in Nevada wants to consult with a doctor at Mayo Clinic. This allows them to do that without going through registrations or licensing. Second opinions, specialty assessments, or follow-up care with existing patients. So if you're a doctor in another state, your patient is traveling to Nevada, and they need care while they're here, this allows them to contact their doctor back home and get care and not have to find a doctor here. This doesn't apply to patients who are out of state. Okay, this is only about the patients in Nevada. If you're a practitioner here and your patient goes out of state and they're on vacation in Florida, then you'll be able to provide care if Florida adopts this Uniform Telehealth Act, which gets back to why it's important to have uniformity. So our patients, people here benefit from their traveling, and people from out of states can benefit when they're visiting Las Vegas. This bill doesn't address payment for telehealth services by insurers. That's just not in the act at all. Okay, so that's the basics. And so as I mentioned, Quinn Sheehan and Haley Tansman are here. I think Haley wants to make some remarks. Quinn they'll both be available for questions. So let me go to Ms. Tansman, and then I'll come back and we'll do the nurse anesthetist provision.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon, Chairwoman Marzola and committee members. My name is Haley Tansman, and I serve as a legislative counsel for the Uniform Law Commission. The ULC, organized in 1892, is one of the oldest state organizations, and it is designed to encourage interstate cooperation through uniformity in law. The ULC began drafting what would become the Uniform Telehealth Act in 2020, initiating a multi-year collaborative and nonpartisan process involving a multitude of policy experts, regulators, and stakeholders from various healthcare professions and industries. After careful study of the current telehealth landscape and an involved drafting process, we believe the resulting act represents the very best in telehealth policy. The Uniform Telehealth Act facilitates access to telehealth services that are consistent with the applicable standard of care. The Act recognizes the distinct ways practitioners can leverage telehealth to provide widespread assistance. To provide widespread assistance to patients in a more cost-effective and convenient manner. The Uniform Telehealth Act is also a powerful tool for healthcare equity, facilitating, enabling patients to seek care from a qualified practitioner no matter where they are located. This is relevant nationwide, but especially in Nevada, where there is a significant provider shortage, particularly in the mental health space. The Uniform Telehealth Act has two broad goals. The first goal is to make clear that as a general matter, a practitioner, sorry, my screen is going all over. A practitioner who is licensed or otherwise authorized to provide health care in a state in which a patient is located may provide care through telehealth, if doing so is consistent with the applicable professional practice standards and the practitioner's scope of practice as defined by the patient's state. The second goal is to expand the circumstances under which qualified out-of-state practitioners are permitted to deliver telehealth services to patients located in the enacting state. This would create easier pathways for out-of-state practitioners to treat patients in Nevada via telehealth. If a provider is not otherwise authorized to practice, so sorry, my screen is spasming. Give me one moment. If a provider is not otherwise authorized to practice, such as by license, compact, or another exception to licensure, they may register with the appropriate Nevada board to deliver telehealth services to patients located in Nevada. Registrants must meet a number of requirements, such as holding an active and unrestricted license or certification, not being subject to a pending disciplinary investigation, and not having been recently disciplined. They also must have a registered agent in Nevada. The relevant board maintains authority to discipline or deny a registrant. A similar registration model has been adopted in several states and has shown no increase in disciplinary action. The Uniform Telehealth Act implements a consistent regulatory framework and standards to enable the use of telehealth, while also including important patient protections to ensure patient safety and the appropriate use of telehealth services. The Uniform Telehealth Act recognizes that telehealth is merely a delivery method for healthcare, not a separate form of healthcare. This act makes clear that any practitioner using telehealth must be licensed or otherwise certified to deliver care in the state, meet the same standard of care as for in-person healthcare services in the state, and must comply with all federal laws and other state laws. We believe this act can be especially helpful for Nevada, which is currently facing a critical provider shortage and mental health crisis. Unfortunately, Nevada ranks last in the United States for overall mental health and second lowest in the Mountain West for workforce availability, with only one provider available per 460 residents. While this act cannot solve this issue, it is sure to alleviate the provider shortage by enabling out-of-state providers to reach patients in Nevada. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and thank you to Assemblyman Orentlicker for your hard work on Assembly Bill 198.
Assemblyman Orentlicker, for the record, thank you, Ms. Tasman. So I do want to say one more thing about the telehealth portion. I did hear from the Psychology Board about their concerns with the registration provision in Section 13 of the bill, which would allow a psychologist who's licensed as a psychologist in another state to register here and then be able to deliver telehealth services from their home state to somebody living in Nevada. Only telehealth, again, they can't do with this registration process in person. And when they talked to me, the representatives from the psychology board, they observed that we have more stringent standards for licensing psychologists than some of the other states. So their concern is adopting the Telehealth Act as is could invite telehealth services by professionals who do not provide the highest quality of care. Well, I took these concerns seriously because it is important that our residents have high-quality care. And I explored options to accommodate their concerns with an amendment to the Act. In the end, I decided not to propose an amendment, and for important reasons. First, as Ms. Tansman indicated, this act, this Uniform Telehealth Act, emerged from a multi-year drafting process with input from a broad range of stakeholders. If you haven't been participating in a Uniform Law Commission drafting process, I encourage you to do so. You'll be very heartened at the efforts that people put in, like Assemblywoman Backus here, who spend a lot of time and voluntarily, and you get a wide range of experts from all over the country. And in this case, so this act was carefully vetted by experts in healthcare and law, and I think that makes for a strong presumption against revising the act. Second, as I indicated, uniformity is valuable in telehealth. If every state revised the act to suit its own purposes, you and your constituents might not be able to receive care from your doctor or nurse when you're traveling out of state. Third, as Ms. Tansman mentioned, the Psychology Board will still have authority to intervene if out-of-state psychologists are not providing good care. These people have to be registered, they have to be, and give, we have to be approved, no disciplinary problems in the past. And if there's any problems, once they start delivering telehealth, our Psychology Board can take action against them. So we have good safeguards. And there's good evidence that this works, because we can look to Florida for reassurance on the concerns of the Psychology Board. Florida enacted a registration process similar to one that's in the Uniform Telehealth Act back in 2018. They got ahead of the curve. And Florida also has stringent licensing standards for psychologists, even slightly more stringent than our standards in Nevada. And I submitted a study of the Florida experience, also Idaho, as an exhibit. And what that study shows is Florida has not seen problems with out-of-state psychologists delivering telehealth services. And most importantly, we, as Ms. Tansman said, we have a serious shortage of mental health professionals in Nevada. As a KFF report from this past September demonstrated, mental health care professionals are meeting only 29% of the needs for mental health services by Nevadans. We need to address this shortage, and this act will do that. Okay, I'm now going to transition to Section 24. This bill addresses our shortage of healthcare professionals in another way. Often the only professionals authorized to deliver anesthesia in Nevada are certified registered nurse anesthetists. But our current licensing rules can prevent nurse anesthetists from providing care that they are well qualified to provide. Hence, Section 24 is included in the bill, and I'm grateful to Miranda Hoover for alerting me to this need. So, Section 24. So what this allows would provide for licensure of certified registered nurse anesthetist as a type of advanced practice registered nurse, and as Section 24.1 says, for the purpose of practicing as a nurse anesthetist. And it's designed to ensure that certified nurse anesthetists can practice within the full scope of practice of a nurse anesthetist. Currently, there are barriers to doing that. Hospitals are not letting them, and if you're in an area where aren't anesthesiologists, you may not have an anesthetist for your procedure. It also allows nurse anesthetists to establish an independent practice from which they can contract to provide nurse anesthetist services. This is not a novel proposal. It brings us into line with 42 other states, and the District of Columbia have this exact opportunity for nurse anesthetists to become licensed as a type of advanced practice registered nurse. So We don't have to worry about, we're not going in, these are well-charted waters. So that's what I have to say, but I'll turn to Miranda and Art if they want to amplify. So thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman, and good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Miranda Hoover, and I'm here today co-representing all certified registered nurse anesthetists who practice in the state of Nevada. Here with my colleague, the chair of the Nevada Association of Nurse Anesthetists, who I will introduce momentarily. We all know after, I think we're on day 55 days of testimony, that Nevada has an extreme doctor and provider shortage. And those gaps were only exacerbated during the COVID pandemic. Today is a pivotal day in our state to address some of those gaps with highly qualified providers that are already in our state, but are not able to practice within their full scope currently. Today, Nevada gets the opportunity to hear and discuss what more than 42 states and the District of Columbia have already done. Recognize in state law that certified registered nurse anesthetists, or CRNAs, as I will refer to them going forward, are advanced practice registered nurses. To be clear, giving CRNAs the designation of APRN does not give CRNAs the ability to open up a primary care practice, nor does it allow them to advise a patient by telehealth means. When you Google, are CRNAs APRNs? The resounding response you will get is yes. A CRNA is an advanced practice registered nurse who administers anesthesia and other medications. They also take care of and monitor people who receive or are recovering from anesthesia. This is a direct quote from the Cleveland Clinic. With that, I will dive into Section 24 of the bill. What does APRN status recognition for CRNAs mean? It means codifying the ability for CRNAs to order, possess, and administer within their scope and environment anesthetic agents. This is so they can work autonomously within very specific entities that are within their scope, such as hospitals, surgery centers, dental offices, and podiatry offices. Scope of practice is defined by the who, what, where, when, why, and how of nursing practice, including advanced practice nursing. Day to day, this defines the services that an APRN is permitted to undertake, in keeping with the terms of their professional license. In layman's terms, this simply means there are layers to each designation even under the APRN umbrella, as each license must still work within their specified scope of practice based on their accreditation. We are asking for CRNAs to be classified as a type of advanced practice registered nurse. It is important to note that Section 24(2)(b) says that CRNAs will administer anesthetic agents to a person under the care of a licensed physician, a licensed dentist, or a licensed podiatric physician. We are not here today asking for CRNAs to be granted the full independent practice. As we go into Section 24(3), you will notice we have built boundaries within the bill so other types of APRNs that are not licensed CRNAs cannot work outside of their practice by administering an anesthetic agent or anything that is specific to a CRNA's scope of practice. Section 24(5) offers that if the Board of Nursing would like to require additional training, education, or experience for CRNAs, they have the ability to do so. The remainder of Section 24 outlines specific work that CRNAs are trained to perform and already do in our state, as well as all other states. We are simply codifying the language. Section 26 removes the CRNA license as we are including it as an APRN license. You will note that APRN licenses are the exact same price as current CRNA licenses, and we are not seeking to change that. The remainder of the bill cleans up language to bring this chapter into conformity with the change of including CRNAs as APRNs. In regards to education, One distinct comparison I would like to make in regards to a CRNA versus the general education of a different APRN, such as a nurse practitioner, is that APRN programs are 27 months on average, versus a CRNA program on average is upwards of 52 months. Graduates of nurse anesthesia programs have an average of 9,369 hours of clinical experience versus an APRN that is required to have at least 2 years or 2,000 hours of clinical experience. CRNAs over the last couple of years have run into multiple issues in Nevada with being able to do their jobs simply because this language has not been codified in statute. Their scope is currently only spelt out in the NAC. The intention here is to simply move the scope of practice language that CRNAs have in the NAC, codify it into modern law so they can continue providing quality patient care in Nevada, and bring Nevada into conformity with the 40-plus other states that already recognize CRNAs as the advanced practice registered nurses that they are. This will alleviate the question from regulatory entities about A, who has jurisdiction over CRNAs, and B, to ensure CRNAs are able to practice within 100% of their education, training, and experience, and thus being the healthcare professional they were trained to be. If CRNAs had been able to practice within their full scope through the entirety of the pandemic, Nevada would have had more than 100 nurses able to move seamlessly throughout our most critical facilities during the worst healthcare crisis of our time. I am submitting for the record a letter from James Cooper and Nathan Broadbent, CRNAs who work at the Elko County Hospital, where the only anesthesia care providers are CRNAs. The letter outlines what CRNAs did during the pandemic at the Elko Hospital and how crucial they were in being able to be used autonomously to provide care to COVID patients across the hospital, including in the ICU, where patients were at their most vulnerable. Because of the education, training, and experience that CRNAs have, those at the Elko Hospital helped to educate the ICU nurses even when deficiencies were noticed, and train them in specific critical care techniques. I'll let you read the letter, but this summarizes just some of the important aspects that CRNAs bring to their practice every day, because it is not just administering anesthetic agents that is their specialty. With that, I'm going to pass the bill presentation over to my colleague, Art Savignac, the chair of the Nevada Association of Nurse Anesthetists. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. I am Arthur Savignac. I will spell Savignac, and I am the president of the Nevada Association of Nurse Anesthetists. I will preface my statement, Madam Chair and members of the committee, that between getting married, jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, and sitting here today, I'm not sure which is more anxiety-provoking, but I'm going to say probably this. So anyway, I would like to give just a brief biography of what I have done in my career. I have been a registered nurse for 40 years. I'm originally from the state of Massachusetts. For 33 years, I have been a certified registered nurse anesthetist. I did my training at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C., graduating in December of 1990. For 15 years, I practiced anesthesia in the Army. I traveled all over the world, providing anesthesia services to soldiers everywhere. Of note, one of my most significant opportunities was to be selected by both surgeons and other anesthetists to be a member of Joint Special Operations Command, Joint Medical Augmentation Unit, to provide care to special operations warriors around the world, providing anesthesia care, trauma, and resuscitative care as needed. CRNAs were chosen for this role primarily because not just did we know how to do anesthesia, but in the event that we had an issue with medical evacuation of a patient from some foreign land, that CRNAs were able, as critical care nurses as well, to provide care to these patients, these soldiers that deserve the best. We did that very well. Other assignments that I had in the military included training. I was for 4 years, program director, teaching nurse anesthetist students from 1998 to 2002 at Madigan Army Medical Center in Washington State, Tacoma, Washington. Training these soldiers, these anesthetists who deployed around the world to Iraq and Afghanistan when the war on terror broke out, and watching them save lives around the world brought us great pride. In addition, at Madigan, I was also a member of the root cause analysis team. Anytime there is a medical event, a critical event that occurs in any medical facility, a team is assembled and an investigation is performed. And as part of that investigating team, we learn many different things about how critical events do occur. And that has provided me with an insight on a lot of different issues and how to prevent bad things, bad occurrences from happening in hospitals in states, in Nevada, primarily in Nevada where we have worked. Since we have been in Nevada, we moved here in 2008. We moved to Elko, my family and I. We were in Elko providing anesthesia care for 9 years. And in Elko, we had 4 anesthesia providers, all CRNAs. We worked 24/7, 365. We had anesthesia coverage. In 9 years, we never once missed a call. We never once had a surgery that was canceled because we were not available. And we provided expert anesthesia care in obstetrics, in general surgery, in pediatric dentistry, in urology, every specialty that was available at Elko. In that decade that I was there, we provided approximately 35,000 anesthetics, averaging about 3,500 a year in the city of Elko, with both the hospital and the surgery center that is now closed, but at the time it was open. So as you can see, our numbers support the quality of care provided by CRNAs in Elko and around the state. What we seek is, A, we would like APRN status and prescriptive authority. Prescriptive authority that we are looking for is not the ability to write prescriptions to patients that are going to be discharged from the facility. What we look for is prescriptive authority that allows us to provide medication within the scope of our training and practice to administer to patients in the hospital. This is involved preoperatively, intraoperatively, and postoperatively. These medications need to be administered essentially within seconds, that we have to have available to us the ability to provide these medications without the necessity of obtaining a written order from some other provider. CRNAs practice this way and have practiced this way in the state of Nevada for decades, and especially in areas, rural areas like Elko, Ely, Mesquite, Winnemucca, and Fallon and Fernley. These areas are almost exclusively staffed by CRNAs, and removing this ability for them to provide these medications and to provide them with the prescription that we need to obtain could be potentially catastrophic to these patients. So the NRS has been interpreted, which is a manner confusing to other medical specialties. Passage of this bill will provide clarity and uniformity across the spectrum of medical treatment facilities in this state. I would like to refer to Elko again as one paragraph that I would like to read to you from the letter that has been submitted by Ms. Hoover. At the hospital in Elko, many key people and providers, including CRNAs, prepared an emergency plan for when the community would be stricken with a surge of virus-related cases. In September of 21, the emergency plan was enacted and all elective surgical cases were canceled. The CRNAs were freed from elective surgery to use their broad and wide-ranging anesthesia experiences and extensive critical care backgrounds to help with the patient surge at the hospital. The nursing background was essential. The anesthesia knowledge was critical and life-saving in Elko. It is demonstrated that the capacity of CRNAs to provide anesthesia care is there, and we would be doing a disservice to the citizens of this state if we do not provide them the ability to provide the care on a timely basis that their patients need, our patients need. So in closing, I am here on behalf of the 125 give or take, certified registered nurse anesthetists in the state of Nevada. These providers are rarely heard of, precisely because the safe care we provide goes on across this state. We work every day, 24/7, in the operating rooms, the obstetric suites, MRIs, the offices, dental offices, the emergency rooms, and the clinics of the vast majority of medical facilities in this state. Other cities, I just have numbers from Winnemucca, Mesquite. I told you 35,000 cases in Elko, 11,000 in Winnemucca, 11,000 in Mesquite over that previous decade of safe anesthetics provided by CRNAs. I have not included the population centers. CRNAs do practice in Washoe and Clark County. primarily as members of an anesthesia care team, so getting exact numbers is kind of difficult. But for the rural cities, the rural areas of Nevada, we have established that exclusively CRNAs provide the care, and we need to continue this. Recruiting CRNAs to Nevada has been a challenge. Not being acknowledged as APRNs has been an issue. People do not want to work here, move here, because they have found, they have found that they do not recognize, their practice is not recognized, and they don't feel comfortable coming here. So we hope that by obtaining this APRN status that we will be able to recruit. Additionally, there are 2 CRNA schools that are opening at UNLV and Roseman University in Las Vegas, and we trust that they will be matriculating students starting in 2024. Graduates of advanced practice programs will typically choose to remain in the state in which they have trained. By having these schools, having APRN status, and having the ability to retain these people, we hope we can alleviate the shortage of anesthesia providers in this state. I implore you to provide us with legal recognition and status as APRNs. This includes our having the full prescriptive authority under the guidelines of the facilities we provide anesthesia for, we provide anesthesia services for. This will enable us to make split-second decisions for life-saving drugs required for safe administration and safe anesthesia care. The citizens of the state of Nevada need access to safe and timely anesthesia care every day, in every setting. CRNAs are there every day and have been there every day for at least the last 40 years in the state. As APRNs, the quality of care our patients have received for decades will be assured in the future. Madam Chair and the committee, I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I will gladly entertain them. Thank you.
Assemblyman Orient-Licker, for the record, thank you for giving us the time. We're ready for questions.
Thank you for your presentation, committee members. Vice Chair Howdigi.
Thank you, Chair. And I have a question on Section 34, because we previously heard another bill about how some are required to, the AAs are required to, they can operate, but they are required to operate under the supervision of a physician. And so there's nowhere in Section 24 that says CRNAs would have to be under the supervision of a physician, correct? So this would be a CRNA just acting independently with no doctor's oversight.
For the record, Miranda Hoover, and Art, I'll let you take this too. So currently the way that CRNAs practice in the state, as Art mentioned, is in the rural areas, they do not have to be under the supervision of a physician. They work within the hospital setting as part of the hospital care team, and they work under the hospital's guidelines, such as the hospital's DEA number. They do the same thing in the urban areas. Most of the CRNAs that work within Washoe and Clark work within that anesthesia care team, and thus are either employed specifically by an anesthesiology group, which is then contracted with the hospital and surgery centers, or within a care team such as that. So you are correct, for the record. And again, I did want to mention that based on Section 24(2)(b), the patient themselves still has to be under the care of a licensed physician, licensed dentist, or a licensed pediatric physician. Thank you.
Exactly. And can you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, Miranda Hoover.
Thank you. Follow up, Madam Chair? Yes. Okay, and so that under the care of physician, that could just be the surgeon who's not an anesthesiologist. Like if they were going in for surgery, they would be under the care of the surgeon, but who doesn't specialize in anesthesiology. And with that, where does the liability come in? Who's liable? Who carries the insurance, that liability product, in case there is an instance where something goes wrong?
Art Savanek, primarily, when we worked in Elko, the way we operated was we had a medical director of our anesthesia department. We had quarterly meetings with him, and he basically was our go-between between the anesthesia department and the hospital if we had any issues that needed to be handled. As far as malpractice goes, every provider carries their own malpractice insurance. If there is an issue, the provider who has the issue is the one that is liable if it's proven that they were at fault, if there was something that has happened, and that's why we carry malpractice insurance. Typically, the surgeon, unless there was some surgical malpractice or if there was some surgical issue, the surgeon would not be involved.
One last question, Madam Chair, just because, I'm sorry, you did spring another question. So is the medical director a physician, and is, you said malpractice, so CRNAs are required to carry their own malpractice insurance?
Art Savanak, yes. Our medical director was a general surgeon that we worked with daily, so he knew of our capacity to provide safe anesthesia care. And yes, each individual provides their own malpractice.
Next, we will go to Assemblyman Carter.
I apologize in advance for the bipolar nature of this question, but the first part of it is, what do these two issues have to do with each other? They're not linked at all together, and it makes no sense while they're both in the same bill. The second part is, would our state, how many other states are already in this telehealth, have enacted this telehealth legislation, and is there some type of compact for or reciprocity agreement to provide the other way around?
Assemblyman David Orient-Licker, for the record, I'll start, and then Ms. Tansman will fill in, or Ms. Sheehan. This Uniform Act was just approved last summer, so nobody's had time to enact it yet, and I'm hoping we will, and other states are considering it. And a fair number of states, as I mentioned, Florida, anticipated the act by adopting very similar provisions. We already have some provisions like the ability to establish a relationship. So many of the provisions are already in state statute, but this is a very new act, so it's too soon to have a track record of adoption.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And going along the lines of Assemblyman Carter, there's no other states that have enacted it. Do you know if there are any other legislative sessions in session right now that are debating the issue and discussing the issue?
Assemblyman Orient-Licker, for the record, I'll defer to Ms. Sheehan or Ms. Tansman for this one.
Sure. This is Quinn Sheehan, SEGAN. Currently, I believe there are three states in the District of Columbia that have already introduced the legislation this session. As Assembly Member mentioned, it was just finalized after a 2.5-year process in July. So this is the first session when it could be introduced. But also, as he mentioned, every provision that is included within the act has been adopted by another state, including some provisions that Nevada has already adopted.
And of those 4 states who have introduced the legislation, can you tell us the progress of that legislation right now in those 4 states?
I believe 2 are in committee and 1 is pending introduction right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then just one last question. The 2 that are in committee, and could you tell us the 4 states? I believe it's DC, we're here, Rhode Island, and Washington. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And so since we're in committee, what's the other state that's in committee with the legislation?
I believe it is in committee in Rhode Island, and it is pending introduction in DC.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Yurick.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate your efforts in how this bill has been pitched on both issues that are contained herein is an attempt to increase access to health care, which we know is a problem. I know that as I sit here and consider bills this session and they're pitched in that regard, I'm always concerned at increasing the availability and access to health care, but potentially compromising, the quality of the care that we're giving and the long-term implications of that. And I'll be honest to tell you that on both sides of this bill, I have some concerns with that, but I'd like to focus on the first portion, on the telehealth. And if you'll forgive me, I just came out of a marathon session on medical malpractice, so my mind is kind of leaning that way. And in that hearing, we talk a lot about, or discuss a lot, was the standard of care. And especially because this is relatively new, I looked at section 9 here on the bottom of page 3 and the top of page 4 that basically permits out-of-state doctors. It says state means a state of the United States, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the United States Virgin Islands, or any other territory or possession subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S., to include federally recognized Indian tribes. So my question is that when we're talking about the quality of care and the standard of care, there's going to be, I can imagine, quite a diversity of standards of care there. And when we're trying to protect our in-state patients, what standard of care would you propose would apply where maybe some telehealth went wrong and led to some sort of injury?
Sure, I can take this one, Quinn Sheehan, SAGAN. So the standard of care that would apply is the standard of care in Nevada. And to take a step back as to how telehealth is currently practiced in Nevada, a provider who is in California in a federal Indian tribe, in Tennessee, who has a Nevada license, is able to deliver telehealth, is authorized to deliver care through a telehealth delivery to Nevada patients right now. Whether or not this bill passes, they are expected to follow the standard of care and practice in Nevada. Our bill doesn't change that. What it changes is the authorization and the what types of providers are allowed to deliver telehealth. It still recognizes providers who have a Nevada license. It recognizes providers who are authorized through various occupation compacts to deliver care via telehealth, and it sets up a registration model. And as part of that registration, out-of-state providers, in addition to the requirements that Ms. Tasman mentioned, are expected to follow the Nevada standard of care, just as out-of-state providers who are licensed are able to do so. For those providers who fail to do so, the Nevada regulatory boards retain their authority with registered practitioners as well as licensed practitioners to enforce those standards.
Okay, so I hear you saying that the Nevada standard of care would apply, but as I understand it, could be, let's just, and I don't want to pick on any jurisdiction, let's just say state X that's on the other side of the country where their standard of care differs significantly from Nevada. If they're licensed there and are just going to reach out now through a registration process, they could practice telehealth in Nevada now with no experience in Nevada. How would a doctor that registers here in state X how could we be offered any sort of assurances that they would understand, appreciate, and practice within our standard of care?
I think, well, to take a step back, first of all, Nevada already authorizes as an out-of-state provider in Tennessee, for example, who might have a different type of standard of care, I possibly within Tennessee than Nevada does, to practice in Nevada without having ever stepped foot in Nevada. And it goes through a license where the procedure is, they're verified as to good standing and goes through the entire licensing process and has a license in the state of Nevada, which can be revoked by the Nevada Medical Board. The registration process operates similarly. It is a streamlined process. The practitioner has to be within good standing. They have to be licensed in the state where they are residing, and they deliver care via telehealth, as I mentioned, with the expectation. So I think we also have to recognize the reality right now that there are providers outside the state of Nevada who are delivering care. The second point, which Assemblyman mentioned in introducing the bill, is we have evidence for the last 2.5 years, all 50 states, including Nevada, had modifications on their licensure or waiver to enhance cross-border care. We did not see a significant increase in discipline. And with the Florida registration model specifically, we have not. Our committee looked at this significantly, and we had experts from across the country. We had providers, patients. And one of the questions was, how do we leverage telehealth to its full potential to meet patient access needs while retaining the standard of care? Some people propose just full reciprocity. If you're licensed anywhere, you're able to treat patients in a state. Our committee felt that didn't give boards enough authority over providers who are serving patients in their in their state, we looked to a lot of models and looked at streamlining certain provisions for those that are not opening up facilities within the state, such as a registration model, was a pathway that balanced both access and accountability. And as we said, other states, Delaware, West Virginia, Florida, Arizona, have implemented this. And it's been used by a variety of practitioners. We've heard in Florida that a lot of the health systems are using it to deal with shortages. Specialists are using it. It's being used, well, other parts of the act to treat college students who are across state lines. So, we, as I mentioned, we heard from experts as to the issues of cross-border care, and this is where the registration model came from.
Assemblyman David Orntlicker for the record. Thank you. And I'd just like to add a couple things. There's not different standards of care in different states, right? Doctors, nurses, psychologists observe the same general standard of care. There can be differences in what you need to do to qualify for a license, but once you're licensed, there's a national standard of care. Obviously, there are variations. If you're practicing in Winnemucca, you don't have a level 1 trauma center, so we don't expect you to provide level 1 trauma care as you would if you were at UMC. But given whatever resources you have, it's the same standard of care nationwide. And the other part is, as we've seen, we have good evidence, both from the COVID lifting of restrictions and Florida and the other states that have adopted these rules. We don't see problems because every state, we are concerned about having qualified people licensed. Every state worries about that. And so that's why we don't see problems. And I wouldn't bring this bill if I thought this would undermine the quality of care. I brought this bill because, as you heard, this was a carefully vetted bill. And one of the unfortunate realities is part of the reason why we have shortages in healthcare professionals is there are artificial barriers to practice. Some of the requirements are justified on the basis of ensuring quality of care, but some are designed to keep out competition. That's what professional groups try to do, is maintain their, advantage and not open too much. They don't want competition too much. Well, unfortunately, we've gone too far with the artificial barriers, and this is an important way to address the problem that, as I said before, we only have enough mental health professionals to meet 20% of the needs, and that's true. If you were in Judiciary this morning, you heard about the shortages in a lot of specialties. And if we don't allow telehealth, we're going to make it very hard to address the shortage of healthcare access in Nevada.
Committee members, any additional questions? Vice Chair Howdigi.
Thank you for your indulgence, Madam Chair. And I know all too well the shortage of healthcare workforce. I mean, we hear it almost on a daily basis in this committee. And so I just want to ask all the questions that I have to make sure that I have a full understanding. And so my question is going to be on Section 19. Just having sat on Commerce and Labor for 4 sessions now, we hear a lot about the provider-patient relationship and how important that is. And so can you walk me through how does an out-of-state doctor through an in-state provider establish a provider-patient relationship? Because I know from hearing, in different fields of healthcare how important that is. And, there was a bill that I think it was 3 sessions ago having to deal with veterinarians where they just stressed like how important it is, even when it comes to animal care, establishing that patient-provider relationship. So can you walk me through, because that out-of-state doctor isn't going to establish an in-person one. So how does that happen?
Sure. I was just, as I'm pulling this up, Quinn Sheehan.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Committees. Sure, it's Quinn Sheehan, Shean. I was just pulling this up as we talked, because I don't know this was mentioned in any of the testimonies submitted. The Federation of State Medical Boards, in addition to the exact same time the Uniform Law Commission was looking at this, also was rethinking their telemedicine policy, which had been adopted in 2014. They recently released it last year. And in it, they reiterated, which is already the law in all 50 states across the country, including Nevada, that a physician, for example, can establish a patient relationship via telehealth, both through synchronous and asynchronous types of communication where appropriate. They go through the list in detail as to things that need to be a part of that. And it's also dependent on the condition and making sure that the provider has the necessary information, both from the patient verifying identity, disclosing the identity of the provider, performing an examination kind of commensurate with the standard of care. We can submit that as an exhibit going through all those points. For some patients, telehealth is not going to be an appropriate care setting to form a relationship. But in some, it will be, and it might be the best one depending on their circumstances, their ability to seek care elsewhere where they are located. But as with other healthcare settings, that discretion is left up to the provider based on their education, training, as to whether they can meet the standard of care. So I'm happy to provide that as an exhibit where the Federation goes through all the steps that they believe are necessary in a telehealth context to form that relationship.
Assemblyman David Orntlicker, for the record, just to add, the ability to establish a relationship, that's already in code. That's NRS is the first part of the slide, 629.515. We've already done that. What this bill, if in section 19 talks about, is if you have a doctor or provider relationship, a Nevada nurse or doctor with a relationship with a patient here, the Nevada practitioner wants to consult via telehealth with a specialist out of state. So, you know, you're in Winnemucca, you think they've got a particular kind of cancer, you want to talk to somebody at MD Anderson or Sloan Kettering for guidance about this kind of cancer. This allows you to make that call and have that doctor from the specialty center consult with you.
Assemblywoman Duran.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this bill forward. So my question is, it just prompted a question for me. So how is that going to work for your billing purposes? Because I know we're having issues with that as it is right now. So are you going to need a referral from your insurance to get this doctor, or do you know anything about how that's going to be handled?
Assemblyman Orntlicker, for the record, I don't know, and this act doesn't address insurance, but if Ms. Sheen or Ms. Tansman have something to add, please do.
Quinn Sheehan, SHEAN. I think, was this in reference to whether the insurance is going to cover a second opinion consult from an out of state or just generally? You know, I'm not familiar with the particulars of Nevada's coverage requirement as to telehealth services. Many payers have, you know, encouraged the use of telehealth and do cover it as an in-network service. With the specific out-of-state consults, I'm not sure the policy on that, because this is really about the authorization for those out-of-state providers to consult with an in-state provider or provide a specialty opinion consult to a patient without having to be licensed in this state. So I'm not sure the particulars of payment there.
My concern is just that if this comes back to an unforeseen consequence for the patient to be billed something like this, but I think that needs to be figured out because it will fall back on the patient, and with that, it's going to be harder for them. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. So I'm going to go back to Section 24 because I'm trying to, you know, we just passed out of the committee AB 270, which talks about the certified anesthesiologist assistants, and then now we have the CRNAs. So I'm just trying to understand that bill, their required supervision of an anesthesiologist, and then this bill is saying the CRNAs would not have that. And I'm just trying to understand the difference here and why it would be different for these two, which are, you know, seemingly they're neither doctors, that's not their education, although they're very highly educated in what they do. So I'm just trying to understand the difference.
Miranda Hoover for the record, and thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. Yes, there are very clear differences. CRNAs are nurses. After 2025, not only will they all be required to have a master's degree, they also will be required to have a doctorate in practicing anesthesia for nurses. Anesthesia assistants are assistants. They are not registered nurses. And I'll let Art take the rest of that.
Art Savanak, for the record. One thing I do want to establish is that anesthesia safety standards are uniform across all levels of practice. So when there are monitoring requirements that a patient gets monitored for every anesthetic, they're equally applied by both CRNAs and by anesthesiologists. Training, when we train, we typically train at the same facility that an anesthesiologist may train at. So the type of care is the same. The type of patients that we see are the same. So there is almost, I won't say a uniformity of education, but the standards that are applied to every patient interaction are the same. So this is the type of anesthesia care that has been provided by CRNAs in this state for 40 years, in the United States for over 100.
Assemblyman Orrin-Licker, if I'd just like to add to your question about the distinction, one parallel distinction you might think about, physician assistants practice have to be associated with a physician, often varies with states, but it's not unusual to say they can't have an independent practice, they have to be supervised by and associated with a physician, where an advanced practice registered nurse might be able to have an independent practice and not have to be supervised by a physician.
Okay, thank you for the answers, and that's just what I'm trying to understand. Yes, an APRN, but I'm still having difficulty with this because, you know, we're talking about a patient is putting their life in the hands of that person giving him the anesthesia, and so I just think that's a little bit different than an APRN situation, because I mean, that's just, in my mind, that's just more serious when you're going and having surgery and having anesthesia. So I'm just trying to understand this and like make that distinction in my mind. And I honestly just have still a little difficulty with that, not being supervised by an anesthesiologist in this situation.
Miranda Hoover for the record. Assemblywoman, I am happy to provide to you a cross-comparison spreadsheet that I have, as of course we have been very involved in AB 270, and I'm happy to provide that to the committee for additional reference, and any questions, please let me know.
Any additional questions? I don't see any. I just have a quick question. So, and I don't know if maybe this was my colleague's question for more clarity. So as it stands right now, a CRNA has to be under the supervision of an anesthesiologist, correct?
Art Savanak, for the record. CRNAs can practice in multiple different environments. They can practice under medical direction with an anesthesiologist. They can practice as part of an anesthesia care team. So basically, it is more of a collaborative environment where CRNA and anesthesiologist may formulate an anesthesia care plan for the patient for that day, or autonomously, which is the way the vast majority of anesthesia in rural areas in this state are provided. Again, I have provided some numbers that will tell you the safety level of anesthesia care that is provided on a daily basis in the state, both elective and emergent. So the training that CRNAs receive allows us to practice in these environments.
Thank you for that clarification. Any additional questions? We'll go to support testimony. Is there anyone? Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 198? Please state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Bray, spelled Sheila Bray, with the University of Nevada, Reno. We would like to voice our support for AB 198. We thank Assemblyman Ornlicker for bringing forth this bill. Section 24 specifically will allow CRNAs to be considered APRNs, granting them full practice authority in our state. This is important for our university's Orvis School of Nursing and will help with faculty recruitment, the ability to find clinical practicum placements for our students, and bring more CRNAs to the state. As mentioned in this bill presentation, investment in our healthcare system is a vital workforce need for our state. This provision is a good step in that direction. Thank you, and we urge your support of AB 198.
Greg Esposito, representing the Nevada State Pipe Trades. I may be the only non-medical related professional in the room, but telehealth has been a boon to my membership and their families. You know, a lot of my members have recurring injuries, a strained back or a bad knee from the work that they do. They don't need to go back to see a doctor. They don't need to actually, take the time, make an appointment to go into the facility. Telehealth has enabled them to quickly connect with their doctor, and get the prescription or get the referral that they need. And so expanding the availability of doctors, expanding the availability of appointments would be really helpful to my membership and other construction workers in the state. On a personal level, as somebody who's neurodivergent, I need to see my psychiatrist every month or every 2 months in order to get my medication. I don't actually have to go in anymore. I can get that prescription through telehealth, which was not an option before. So any expansion of telehealth where there's more providers, more ability for people to meet their medical needs without having to go into a facility, we are in support of. Thank you.
Madam Chairperson, members of the committee, Dr. Morgan McCarroll, thank you for the time and the opportunity to speak today. I'm an anesthesiologist in Northern Nevada, and I've practiced here for about 20 years. I've also had the pleasure of practicing in California, Washington, Montana, New Jersey, and I went to medical school in Louisiana. In those states, I've had the pleasure of working in the team care model with nurse anesthetists, as well as working side by side with nurse anesthetists at the height of the COVID epidemic in New Jersey. And I've been very, very impressed with the quality of care provided by nurse anesthetists and the collaboration, the professional collaboration that we've had over those years. In my current position as a chair of anesthesia, I'm well aware of the needs for healthcare providers in Northern Nevada and the difficulty with which it is to recruit people to this area, both physicians and nurse anesthetists. One of the concerns that nurse anesthetists have from out of state have expressed to me is the need for, or the concerns about not having advanced practitioner status in this state and the lack of recognition of that. And so I feel that AB 198 would address that and allow us to recruit more nurse anesthetists and thus provide better quality health care than we're able to now with our stressed environment. So with that, I will yield for any questions.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
You may begin when you're ready. Whoever's next.
Good morning. I'm Landon Mortson, Landon Mourtsen, and I'm the Director of Anesthesia in Winnemucca, Humboldt General Hospital, and a CRNA. I'm along with 4 others there. Recently, I responded to a code in the emergency room and saw a little baby on the table being resuscitated. The ER physician had attempted 3 times to put a breathing tube in that baby. I asked if I could try and was able to secure that breathing tube and help that baby breathe. That baby's the same age as my little girl, and that's who I saw on the table when I put that breathing tube in. It's hurtful to hear that physicians being marginalized as a nurse, being a physician's end-all be-all. We have very similar training. I have 10 years of training and education to be a CRNA. The studies show that it's no safer to receive care from an anesthesiologist as a nurse anesthetist. Recently, the Board of Pharmacy has restricted us from ordering medications, and this bill will help us be recognized as advanced practice nurses, who I think we have adequate training to be recognized in that capacity. We shut down an OR in Winnemucca today so I could come and testify because it's so important to our community, the service that we provide independently. I love my community, and I think that my family, my fellow members of my community deserve to receive anesthesia care, and we won't be able to without nurse anesthetists currently. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson Marzola, and thank you, committee members. My name is Jennifer Brown. I am the Chief CRNA at Carson Tahoe Hospital. I have been a nurse for 20 years and a CRNA for 14 years. I hold an APRN license in Hawaii, Maine, Alaska. Additionally, I hold a DEA license in Alaska in order to perform anesthesia in those states. I am reminded again and again that CRNAs are one of the best kept secrets in healthcare. So many people have no idea that we even exist. Yet nurses have been delivering anesthesia independently since before anesthesiologists were a specialty of physicians. In fact, nurses have been delivering anesthesia for the U.S. military since the Civil War. That's over 150 years. Today, there are 44,000 CRNAs and 31,000 anesthesiologists practicing in the United States. That's 13,000 more CRNAs than physicians. At Carson Tahoe, our anesthesia team consists of 10 CRNAs and 3 anesthesiologists. Studies show that CRNAs and physicians provide the same quality of anesthesia care. That is why in every state, teams consist of a mix of CRNAs and physicians. Sometimes bills are meant to fix the language of previous bills that weren't perfectly written. This is one of the times. The purpose of this bill is to align Nevada law with healthcare across the nation. Everyone knows we need more healthcare workers. This bill will fix confusing language that scares CRNAs away. Thank you. Please pass AB 198 and bring more healthcare workers to Nevada. Thank you.
My name is James Cooper, C-O-O-P-E-R. I am a CRNA who has been practicing for over 23 years in Elko, Nevada. That was after completing my training at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Over these 23 years, I have complied with the provisions that were set in the NRS and the NAC chapters 632 and 449, which detail the practice of nursing and how a CRNA can practice in a medical facility in the state. I have worked alongside my fellow CRNAs without the supervision of an anesthesiologist providing anesthesia to over 70,000 patients in Elko. I have personally performed more than 15,000 anesthetics, ranging from routine procedures like tonsillectomies, gallbladders, and C-sections to emergency cases such as appendectomies and fractured arms. Additionally, I have provided anesthesia for gunshot wounds to the abdomen, trauma from automobile accidents, ruptured spleens, lacerated livers, and post-delivery hemorrhages of new mothers. All of these life-threatening. All of these were performed in the operating rooms in Elko without an anesthesiologist. Despite Elko being a relatively small town, we face similar life-threatening emergencies in the larger cities like Las Vegas and Reno have. Therefore, it is essential for our surgeons and communities to have well-trained anesthesia providers who can provide competent anesthesia services. The state of Nevada recognizes the need for CRNAs to practice at the pinnacle of our profession, since traumas, emergencies, and routine cases happen everywhere, and not everywhere is there a practicing anesthesiologist. I want to emphasize that AB 198 is not a change to the governing provisions or scope of practice for nurse anesthetists. Instead, it will recognize CRNAs as advanced practice nurses, which we have always been. I urge you to pass AB 198. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marissa Watt, and I am a CRNA here in Carson City. I am here to share kind of what I've been going through since I've moved to Nevada. I moved here about 3 years ago, and since I've moved here, I've worked in 2 hospitals, 2 surgery centers, and also independent GI centers as well. I've worked in all the practices that you've heard today. I've worked in supervisory practice, also medical direction, and also as an independent provider here in Nevada. And I just want to say AB 198 will recognize us as we need to be recognized advanced practice nurses. Already, the majority of states in the United States recognize us as advanced practice nurses, and Nevada here is behind the times. This bill will not mean necessarily that all nurse anesthetists will now practice independently. We will still practice in care teams and also independent providers in certain areas that need them, and it will increase access to care in these areas, especially rural areas. For our communities, this is very important. As I just told you, all the different areas where I've worked was because of the tenuous healthcare environment here in Northern Nevada. And I'm hoping that AB 198 will help stabilize that environment and provide more access to care to our communities. Thank you so much for hearing me today.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Adler, and going to the telehealth portion of AB 198 on behalf of NAPNA, First Med, Vitality Unlimited, and New Frontier. These clients of mine who are providers of healthcare and behavioral health care to rural Nevada are in strong support of the telehealth provisions of the bill. Telehealth is essential to create access to providers and to reach patients in a timely and cost-effective manner. For example, First Med, which is an FQ in Las Vegas, is providing psychiatry and mental health services to William B. Ryrie Hospital in Ely. And the judicial court up there just asked for First Med to assist them with creating an alternative court. So, but turning to Section 24, on behalf of the Nevada Advanced Practice Nurses Association, we are 100% in support of Section 24 of the bill. APRNs take pride in their independent practice authority and being fully accountable to their license. This has created greater access to primary and specialty care. It is time to do the same for access to anesthesia services, including the carefully defined prescriptive authority that you find in the bill. I think it's very important to emphasize the ability to create seamless service throughout a community, in the multiple places in a community that are in need of anesthesia care. Nevada State Board of Nursing is in charge in Section 5 in further defining scope of practice. They do a great job in protecting the public health and welfare for APRNs, and they will do the same for CRNAs. We ask you to join 42 other states in declaring CRNAs as APRNs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Blaine Osborne with Nevada Rural Hospital Partners for the record. Here in support of AB 198, both the telehealth provisions and the CRNA provisions, which I want to expand upon briefly. Just 5 days ago in this committee, we heard staggering numbers about the critical shortage of anesthesia services in the state. This shortage is exacerbated in rural Nevada, where our member hospitals cannot get anesthesiologists. Instead, our rural communities rely on CRNAs. Nevada Administrative Code 632.500 already allows CRNAs to select, order, and administer anesthetics. However, in September of 2020, the Nevada State Board of Pharmacy issued an advisory opinion that, subject to the limitations of NRS 453.375 and 454.213, RNs, and therefore CRNAs, may only possess and administer anesthetic agents at the direction of a practitioner or pursuant to a chart order. Sadly, there are only 3 critical access hospitals in Fallon, Ely, and Winnemucca who are still able to provide obstetrics and routine delivery services. The only sources of anesthesia for these patients are CRNAs. This discrepancy affects their scope and puts those services at risk, and we need your help to solve this issue for rural Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman Marzola and committee members. I'm way out of my league here. Let's just get that out of the way. I'm not in the healthcare industry, but I feel like you've made a safe space for me to have a confession. 15 years ago, I learned that there was such a thing as a certified registered nurse anesthetist. I still have trouble saying it. It's quite a mouthful. The first thing I said when I heard about that was, I said, oh, that's new. How nice they're letting nurses do that now. Embarrassing. I said it in the presence of a nurse anesthetist. I learned, as we've been told today multiple times, that nurses have been providing anesthesia since the Civil War. They were providing anesthesia when anesthesia was first invented by surgeons and dentists. They wanted to perform their surgery and dental work, and they quickly trained their nurses how to do that, to take over that specialty. So I did at the time what any grown man would do when he finds that he's been living in a world that's isn't exactly what he thought, and I ran to my mother. And she informed me that throughout the multiple procedures I had as a child, most of those were actually, I had anesthesia delivered by CRNAs, and I didn't even know they existed. The next thing I learned was that there are 30% more CRNAs practicing in the United States than anesthesiologists. Again, that's earth-shattering news, but what it taught me is that the vast majority of anesthesia in the United States for 100 years has been delivered by nurses, by CRNAs, not anesthesiologists, and I had absolutely no idea. So since then, I have read literally dozens and dozens, probably between 75 and 100 studies in the healthcare business related to anesthesia, and another one of my ideas was shattered, and that was, I thought doctors were performing it, anesthesiologists were performing at a level up here, and the nurses were somewhere below that. And I hear a lot of that echoed today. In fact, 0 studies said that. What they said, that they're both performing at the same level of care, which was astonishing to me, but I still try to learn, as old as I am. As a business management consultant, I look at the numbers, and if the current legislation on the books is basically discouraging 60% of the population of anesthesia providers
I
from
need
the
you to
state.
wrap up, please. You're over your 2 minutes, and I need
That
you
was
to
it.
state
Thank
and
you very
spell your
much.
name for the record.
Thank you very much. Chad Brown, ChadBrown. I appreciate your
you.
time.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Joan Hall, representing Lycon today, which is the self-insured med-mal liability insurance company that NRHP runs, that provides liability insurance for 8 of our rural hospitals. First, I just want to say that CRNAs have provided anesthesia services in rural Nevada for nearly 40 years, or at least 40 years that I'm aware of. My C-section that was in Yarrington, the anesthesia was provided by a CRNA. Her name was Rosemary Dupre. She was medically trained in the Army and lived in Hawthorne and provided all of the anesthesia for rural Nevada. She had a real following with the Highway Patrol. They would lead the way each time a different hospital needed her. Just a kind of funny story. Anyway, our insurance company has had obstetrical malpractice cases. We have had surgical malpractice cases, but we have never had an anesthesia malpractice case. Our CRNAs work under the direction and the supervision of their obstetrical doctors or their surgical doctors. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here in Carson City that wishes to testify in support? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 198? Please state and spell your name for the record.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Robert Erickson, Roberterickson. I've been a registered nurse for nearly 15 years, as well as a certified registered nurse anesthetist for 8 years. I've worked in both Las Vegas and Carson City. As a CRNA, it is vital to Nevada citizens that healthcare be delivered with minimal barriers. The goal of this bill is to make our language in the administrative code and use the language to update our nursing statute to ensure regulatory compliance, as our language was last updated 30 years ago in 1993. I hold a leadership role with the majority anesthesiology group in Las Vegas, and I interview interested and qualified out-of-state CRNAs. Questions regarding practice in our state arise in the interview process and regarding state CRNA practice restrictions. The hesitation of potential healthcare providers coming into the state is partially due to the current statute as interpreted that limits scope of practice. As CRNAs, we hope this issue can be resolved at this time, as Nevada is one of the last states to recognize CRNAs to be licensed as APRNs. If this legislation does not pass, the potential ramifications include restricting patient access by shutting down surgical services of facilities staffed by CRNAs, which disproportionately affect Nevada's rural constituents, as well as CRNA educational programs. As we address the anesthesiology provider shortage, 2 CRNA schools are actively in the process of opening here in Nevada, and we've been a clinical site for CRNA students for over 2 years here in Las Vegas. A CRNA is prepared through rigorous education and training at the master's or doctoral level to provide the full spectrum of patients' anesthesia-related care for individuals across the lifespan. We ask that you pass this bill that establishes the Nevada CRNA specialty as advanced practice nursing status as it is in other states across the country. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas that wishes to testify in support to Assembly Bill 198? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in support?
Thank you, Chair. Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 198, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hello, I'm Matt Walker, a doctor of pharmacy and administrator of White Pine County Hospital District here in Ely, Nevada, and I'm in support of AB 198 as its focus is to increase access to care. As many of you know, Ely, Nevada is very isolated. Our hospital and clinics are the only form of health care for over 200 miles. We provide a myriad of services beyond general care, and most of our specialties come in a few days a month and provide elective services, which is sufficient for our volumes. This model works great to bring elective services to many of Nevada's most rural and vulnerable populations. Anesthesia, however, is a little bit different. When someone needs emergent care or comes in to deliver a baby, we can't schedule that. That requires 24/7 coverage. Due to our low volumes, we don't have enough patients to support the pay of an anesthesiologist, which is required to cover 24/7, 365. Also, per our prior testimony, there aren't enough anesthesiologists to go around as is. We currently have 2 nurse anesthetists that rotate and cover the facility 24/7, 365. The cost for these 2 nurse anesthetists is equivalent to 1 anesthesiologist. We feel strongly that with good communication and collaboration between our surgeons and our nurse anesthetists, that we can continue to provide high-quality services to our emergent and elective patients with a model that has proven to be very effective over the past 20 years. Supporting AB 198 will continue to allow care for our rural at-risk patients. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Robin Dunkhorst, ROBYNDUNCHORST. I'm the CEO at Humboldt General Hospital in Winnemucca, Nevada, as well as a 23-year practicing registered nurse within our facility. On behalf of our facility and the access to health care for rural residents of Humboldt County, I thank you for the opportunity today to testify in support of AB 198. To serve and provide thorough access to care for rural patients in our community, it is very important that we're able to continue to provide obstetrical services and emergency services and surgery within our coverage area. And in order to do that, certified registered nurse anesthetists being able to work within the full scope of their practice is a very imperative piece of our puzzle. Currently, CRNAs practice with oversight of surgeons and other doctors here at HGH, but they are beyond qualified to do this independently and as an APRN. I have personally worked the entirety of my career with CRNAs at my side, and there is no one I trust more with airways, critical medications, anesthetic agents, and dangerous drugs more than our CRNAs. Their rigorous and competitive schooling process easily rallies against the most advanced graduate level clinical nursing degrees such as all other APRNs. With escalating inflationary costs, healthcare provider labor shortage issues, and costs of healthcare delivery in Nevada, now is the time to support healthcare providers and allow for maximum usage of well-trained providers such as CRNAs that are the answer to the delivery of surgery, specifically obstetrical services and surgery in rural areas. To put it blunt, rural facilities cannot easily afford, find, or retain anesthesiologists in rural areas because there's a shortage of them as well, and the demand in the metropolitan area is just too great. To fail rural communities by not supporting this bill would be very unfortunate, as we are the disparity. We are where underserved patients could have catastrophic outcomes if CRNAs are not supported, and we're not able to continue to recruit and retain CRNAs due to their lack of ability to get your support with the APRN status and full prescriptive authority. Simply put, CRNAs have earned it. They're qualified, and they deserve this. I trust them with my life and my family's life in surgery. Thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I urge you to support this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Caller with the last three digits 834, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Tom Mann, M-A-N-N. I'm here representing ATA Action, the American Telemedicine Association's affiliated trade organization focused on policy advocacy. First off, I just want to thank you for inviting testimony on this legislation and for all of your work to advance access to telehealth in Nevada. I'll keep this brief, as a lot of our sentiments here have already been spoken about earlier. But ATA Action was a close observer of the 2-year process by the ULC to develop this language, which included perspectives from providers, patients, legal experts, and other healthcare stakeholders. ATA Action fully supports the outcome of all that work and believes this legislation will greatly expand access to healthcare and fulfills many of ATA's core policy principles. Excuse me. By ensuring access to telehealth providers, the legislation expands the total pool of providers for patients to choose from, as well as greater patient choice for how that care is delivered, including from the comfort of their own home or office, so long as the standard of care is met. The legislation allows many different healthcare professionals to offer telehealth services in addition to physicians, including APRNs, physician assistants, and others. Additionally, the legislation's licensure and registration provisions remove barriers on access and continuity of care while empowering state boards to monitor for safe care delivery and provider discipline. Additionally, I would just say that ATA Action had submitted a letter of support to the committee that we didn't see listed in the exhibit, so we will resubmit that following this hearing. Thank you again for listening to our testimony and for supporting telehealth. Please do not hesitate to reach out to ATA Action with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Callers, if you've recently joined and like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 198, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
God bless you.
Hello, my name is Robert Carnahan, C-A-R-N-A-H-A-N. I'm a nurse, but I'm also the CEO of Banner Churchill Community Hospital here in Fallon, Nevada. We just want to, just like everyone that's been before me, we, Banner Churchill, we would like to support AB 198 as well. Our hospitals and our physicians support the ability for CRNAs to prescribe and dispense all anesthetic medications that they're trained to provide. There's a highly collaborative approach between our surgeons and our CRNAs. They're highly involved in patient care and those positive outcomes for our patients. The physicians value the delivery of anesthesia care that the CRNAs provide, as well as that valued respect for them as well. Our CRNAs have provided years of safe care with 0 opportunities. not having the CRNAs with this ability to prescribe anesthetic agents will definitely put us at risk for discontinuing services in our Nevada community and that access for Nevadans care as well. And exclusively for us, we also support the Naval Air Station Fallon. And this, not having the CRNAs here to help us out could jeopardize our OBGYN program. And we deliver a lot of kiddos for the Naval Air Station here. So with limited access to OB services, obviously in rural communities, like was mentioned, there's like 3 that provide this service. It's imperative that the CRNAs have this prescriptive capacity. We've talked about, this is happening in other states as well. This happened in Wyoming. They just approved this a couple years back for CRNAs to have this prescriptive authority there as well. It's so super hard to get CRNAs in our facility. We recently, a few years ago, we had to go to a vendor, a contracted group, because we were unable to recruit our own. It just seems like it gets worse and worse. Even we had to fly a CRNA from Tennessee out today to help us out with our surgeries tomorrow, just because we were lacking CRNAs for our surgery schedules for tomorrow. So it's just every day it seems to be getting worse and worse. And with our ability to cover 800 general surgical cases.
Sir,
yes.
If you can wrap up your testimony, please, you're over your 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
Just so you know, we are in support of that.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Chair, we have no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 198. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition?
Paul Klein, here on behalf of the Nevada Dental Association. We applaud the bill's effort to increase access to care. That's something we really care about. Our issue is specifically with the 24B, in that an CRNA could go into a dental practice without the oversight of a credentialed dentist. Currently in statute, that dentist who oversees that work has to have a special credential. So we actually are diluting that oversight, which creates malpractice issues, and like Assembly Urick said, and Majority Leader Howdegi said. So we would appreciate if that piece, a licensed dentist from 24B, would be carved out. And I apologize for not bringing it forward before this, but I will make myself available to work on this before the deadline. Thank you.
For the record, Jerry Matsumura, M-A-T-S-U-M-U-R-A. I'm past president of the Nevada State Society of Anesthesiologists and a past board member for the 54,000-member American Society of Anesthesiologists. And I'm here to give testimony opposing 198 based on page 12, section 24. While I'm the one that also presented data that there is a shortage of anesthesia providers, my national society and my state society just feel that not at the cost of patient safety. And essentially, this prescriptive authority is going to give the nurse anesthetist independent practice in the state. Now, I do understand that they've given testimony that they have APRN status in 44 other states. That is probably correct, and that's probably at the state statute level. However, according to the Code of Federal Regulations, the conditions of participation for Medicare and Medicaid, CFR Title 22, 416.42, and if you indulge me, let me just read this so that it sounds pretty clear to me, that anesthesia must be administered by, and they discuss, an anesthesiologist, doctor of medicine, and under the category of 4, a certified registered nurse anesthetist as defined in 410.69B of this chapter, unless exempt in accordance with the paragraph of this section, which I'll discuss that too, is under the supervision of the operating practitioner or of an anesthesiologist who is immediately available. And the exception is basically what we've considered that all the anesthesiologists and nurse anesthetists in the room are familiar with something we call a governor's opt-out. The governor has the ability to opt out after consulting with the State Board of Medicine and State Board of Nursing. Nevada is not an opt-out state, and there's only 22 states, not 44 states that have opted out. So at the federal level, they still have to follow the conditions of participation with Medicare and Medicaid. In addition, it was mentioned before that under the NAC, which they consider an outdated law, yes, it was created in the early 1990s, but I've given testimony to the Board of Health, I'm sorry, I know I'm running out of time, in 1996 and two other times, that, so even though it is an older law, it was brought up for potential change and it was turned down. And in both the outpatient surgery centers and the hospitals, according to the NAC, and I could read the numbers and provide them to you, or you can look it up in the NRS, it does require supervision of a CRNA by the operating practitioner or an anesthesiologist.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Susan Fisher with McDonald Carano speaking today on behalf of the Nevada State Board of Osteopathic Medicine. The board is actually neutral on most of the provisions of AB 198. However, they are opposed to Section 24. If that was amended out, then they might possibly move to support, but they are still neutral on the bill. But with that section, they are opposed. Dr. Matsumura covered a number of the things that I was going to talk about, that Nevada has not, our governor has not opted out of the federal provisions, so that CRNAs would not be able to practice autonomously or be reimbursed by Medicaid or Medicare, because Nevada is not an opt-out state. And I'd also like to correct something that Ms. Hoover put on the record. She referred to certified anesthesiologist assistants as just assistants. That's incorrect. These are highly trained professionals, just as CRNAs are highly trained professionals. Both of these areas of medicine are very important to the state of Nevada and across the nation. Most certified anesthesiologist assistants have masters. Most of them have pre-med. They have a lot of biology and chemistry in their undergraduate degrees. They are required to have a bachelor's degree before they can even apply to a CAA program. And I would also note that even though we're focusing on this bill, but the CAA bill that you just passed out of this body unanimously earlier today requires that they practice under a physician anesthesiologist, not just a physician. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Nina Laxalt, and I am representing the Nevada Board of Psychological Examiners. And you heard earlier that the sponsor, I feel like this is going in my eye. You heard earlier that the sponsor did say that the psychology board did start talking to him last winter and about the telehealth section of his bill, or his proposal at that time. As you may know, the psychology board is part of the now Psych Compact, which is one of the few compacts that's Nevada has joined over the last several years, and they've been in it for quite a while now. There's 36 states that are part of that compact, and they have developed a telepsychology, I believe they call it, portion to that compact. The difference between the compact and what this bill does under the Uniform Telehealth Act is, yes, it requires the same standard of care as the sponsor said. The concern of the board was what it doesn't require is the same level of education and training for these people. The compact does require similar training and education, and we believe that this would conflict with the compact and how that is run in our statutes and perhaps our endorsement statutes. So with that, if you have any questions, I have a big, long letter that I can provide from our board president, and we'll help answer any other further questions.
Thank you. If you can provide the letter to the committee secretary. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Marlene Lockhart, representing SEIU 1107, and we oppose SB 198. But not Section 24 of the bill. we feel that the lack of a physical presence and direct contact with patients can hinder the ability of telehealth nurses to accurately assess and diagnose health conditions. Physical examination is a critical aspect of healthcare, and without the ability to perform hands-on assessments, telehealth nurses may miss important signs or symptoms that could lead to a misdiagnosis or incomplete care. Secondly, communication can be challenging in the telehealth setting. Technical issues such as poor video or audio quality can disrupt the flow of conversation and impede effective communication between the telehealth nurse and the patient. And I would like to point out exactly that happened with our first Zoom participant from Las Vegas. The picture froze and the language was garbled, and we missed part of her presentation. And I have more information, but I will, in the interest of time, not present it. But I would like to point out on page 5 of the bill, section 13, subsection B, it says, holds an active, unrestricted license or certification in another state that is substantially equivalent for the registration for which they're applying. And on one last note, the fact that this bill requires the healthcare provider to register is in conflict with the earlier compact bill we heard this week, or Friday. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see anyone. I see someone at the desk already. If you are wishing to testify in opposition to 198, please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin when you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I am Dr. Stephen Sachs, S-A-X-E, President of the Nevada State Society of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons, a Democrat residing in Assembly District 37, and a board-certified oral and maxillofacial surgeon practicing the specialty of dentistry and licensed to administer general anesthesia in Nevada for more than 30 years. I also am employed by our State Board of Dental Examiners to conduct inspections and examinations of dental offices and dentists for state permits who deliver general anesthesia in their offices for many years. I am here to address specifically page 12, section 24, line 23B, under the care of a licensed dentist. The specific conflicts are too numerous to outline in the context of this time testimony if one were to just read the first paragraph from the LCB attached to AB 198 to summarize. It is clearly threatening the safety of Nevadans. I believe this bill and this section should be defeated and go back to the Legislative Counsel Bureau to address the many conflicts that are present with dentistry's Chapter 631 in their NRS and NAC. Over the past 40 years, Nevadans have been protected by those dentists who adhere to specific criteria in their education and in their office settings to assure patients' safety during the delivery of general anesthesia. Most dentists in Nevada do not possess the academic credentials or anesthesia-trained teams in their offices to oversee a nurse anesthetist to deliver general anesthesia, nor are their offices properly designed or equipped to handle the delivery of anesthesia or the potential emergencies that may occur. In addition to the transportation of controlled substances in light of our current opioid crisis may be a problem for Nevadans. The various divisions and boards were surveyed on their fiscal impact of AB 198, but there was no questionnaires on the safety and accountability of AB 198 to our patients' health and well-being. I implore you all to vote no on AB 198. This is not about politics. AB 198 is a very dangerous and poorly written piece of legislation.
Can you please wrap up your testimony?
Yes.
Thank you.
Final couple sentences. please send it back. The dental board specifically has a fully functional anesthesia committee to resolve the obvious conflicts. This is the only way to maintain patient safety measures. Currently, CRNAs are working in Nevada dental offices without the dentist having the appropriate
Sir, I need you to
credentials
please wrap up your
deliver general
testimony.
anesthesia. This is unlawful. And lastly, I wish to
Sir,
address the workforce
I need you to please wrap
shortages
up your
and access.
testimony. You're over your 2 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry.
Is there
Thank you.
anyone else?
Madam
Unless
Chairman, I would like to yield my time to Dr. Sachs.
Thank you. Lastly, the way to address workforce shortages and access to care in Nevada is not to lower our current quality standards to jeopardize the safety of Nevadans. Yes, there are different standards of care, even within our own state of Nevada, as rules have different set of standards than our urban areas. Thank you very much. I appreciate the extra time.
thank you for your testimony.
Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Ma'am, you yield
Yes,
your
ma'am.
time to your counterpart. And so is there
I
anyone?
have the remaining time.
No,
sorry.
I'm sorry. You are more than welcome to submit your testimony in writing, though. Thank you. Is there anyone else in?
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 198? I don't see anyone broadcast. Is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 198, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers wishing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move on to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 198? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 198? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you'd like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 198, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Assemblyman, would you like to give any closing remarks?
Thank you, Chair. David Orient-Licker for the record. Just a few remarks. The main reason for this, as I indicated, is our shortage, our workforce shortage. And we have to use all the tools in our toolbox, and all of them are important, and I'm glad you've addressed them in other bills. Some of them are pipeline bills, and that's good. We need to build our pipeline, but we can't wait. That's going to take time. What's important about both parts of this bill is they'll have an immediate impact. Expanding access to telehealth will create better access for patients. You heard Mr. Esposito, who has trouble taking time off for work. So we're going to get an immediate impact. The CRNAs in our rural communities, who are the only people there to deliver anesthesia. So we're going to get an immediate impact to address our access problems. And second, when it comes to quality, those are the right questions to ask, but all the evidence shows that the quality of care will be just as good with this expansion. We're not asking for new practitioners or different kinds of care. We're just saying, let them practice to the full extent of their abilities. And we want to use them because we don't have enough, so we don't want to use them at 80% of capacity or 60% of capacity. We need to use them at 100%. And on quality, we will see improvements because the patients who need that specialized care, that there's only a few doctors in the country, may not be able to. I can fly to Mayo Clinic or New York or Houston, but not every patient can. And for them to get that access, telehealth gives them the access that they can't otherwise afford. And then finally, on the dental thing, this, as Mr. Klein indicated, he didn't have a chance to speak to me beforehand. I'm not sure I understand the problem, but I will certainly talk to them and make sure we're not doing anything to compromise quality of care in the dental setting. So thank you for your time. I'll touch bases with all of you. I want to make sure you're as comfortable as I am with this bill so that we can get it moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 198. I will now open a hearing on Assembly Bill 432, which revises provisions governing optometry. Assemblyman, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairwoman Marzola, the most illustrious Committee on Commerce and Labor, for allowing me to present AB 432 today. Sat through that last hearing and want to tell you, you guys are a little bit intimidating, but we'll do our best. My name is Dr. Greg Koenig, G-R-E-G, K-O-E-N-I-G. I represent Assembly District number 38, which encompasses 5 rural counties. I have all of Churchill, most of Lyon, all of Mineral, all of Esmeralda, and a good chunk of Nye. So I cover the ruralest of the rurals. Here today with the Nevada State Board of Optometry bill, and I want to keep it short. I know that we're all oversaturated with bill hearings at this point. In fact, if I hear another long hearing coming up, I might go screaming out of the room. I've been accused of this being an omnibus bill, but I hope we can get through it quickly regardless. There's a handful of housekeeping changes, a few definitions, and some things that are important and need to happen for the Board of Optometry. But the thing that attracted me to this bill, and I hope at this point we're not super saturated with telemedicine fatigue, because that's the point that I want to bring forward today. And I'm going to tell a little story. Here in Carson City, I feel like I'm kind of in one little universe, and at home is a whole different universe, and they just kind of tickle the edges of each other. Sometimes there's not, but this is one that my two universes collide. My being an optometrist myself and being a legislator, this is one instance where my two universes have collided. And it's the telemedicine part that got me excited about this bill. And I want to ask your forgiveness if I've already told you this story, but I think it illustrates how I foresee this telemedicine working in optometry, and how it can really be a huge benefit for my rural patients. So I have practices in Fallon and in Fernley and Yerington, and all of them are, considerably fairly small towns. In my Fallon practice, I looked up the demographics last weekend when I have over 500 patients from either Tonopah or Round Mountain, which someone coming from Round Mountain, it can take them almost 3 hours to get to my practice for an eye exam. So they'd have to come to my eye exam, and if they were getting contact lenses, I would do a comprehensive exam, do all the things that are required that we'll be talking about here a little bit later for a comprehensive exam. And then, as long as they didn't have too crazy of a prescription, I would find them a trial pair of contacts. I would put them on their eyes. I'd make sure that they see well. I'd make sure that they fit right and everything was healthy. And then I'd say, this is a trial pair of contacts. I need to see you back in a week for a 5-minute follow-up to make sure that they're working. Now, my Fallon patients, they can drive the 5 minutes to get to my office, no big deal. But these people from Round Mountain, a week later, have another 6 hours in the car to come visit me for a 5-minute contact check on contacts that 90% of the time, 90+% of the time are working just fine. So the initial visit would have to be in person. I would check them, and then I could call them in a week and say, are your contacts working okay? Are they comfortable? Are you seeing well? And if they say yes, at that point, I envision myself finalizing their prescription, giving it to them. They can order contacts from me or from 1-800-CONTACTS or wherever they want. It's their prescription at that point. If there's issues and they say, my left eye's not quite so good, they kind of bug me here and there, then at that point, they would have to come back for another exam. but at least for the majority of those patients, it would save them 6 hours driving for a 5-minute check. And for me, that is a huge benefit for my rural constituents because they just don't have the access. So that's how I envision this working. I want to make one quick note. This bill originally dropped with the 2/3 designation. There was 4 lines that they said cause that. I'm not sure how we agreed with them, but we removed those 4 lines from the bill. So at this point, from what I'm told, it should just be a majority vote on that. And with that, I will turn my time over to my colleague, Mariah Smith, who will quickly summarize the bill. Thank you.
I promise. I'm Mariah Smith. I am the president for the Nevada Board of Optometry, MARIAH-SMITH. Thank you for letting us present to you today AB 432, and thank you for the introduction. Instead of going through section by section, I am just going to summarize the major points of the bill and then allow you to ask questions. One of the things this bill is doing is defining a comprehensive eye exam and limits certain teleoptometric services if the patient has not received a comprehensive eye exam in the previous 2 years. It outlaws the issuance of a prescription for a corrective lens engaging in synchronous or asynchronous optometric telemedicine and monitoring a patient remotely unless the optometrist has performed the comprehensive eye exam in the last 2-year period. A brief definition, asynchronous versus synchronous. Asynchronous, not face-to-face, not in real time. For example, one of the things that we're allowing for in this bill is a consultative report if a patient is under the care of another physician in another facility and say, for example, they take a picture of a fundus, a retina, and it's transmitted to an optometrist for a consultative report to either recommend further in-person care or not. That would be an example of asynchronous care. Synchronous care is face-to-face, either teleconference or maybe even phone, but in real time. That is synchronous care. This bill outlines the parameters of optometric telemedicine. The measure restricts optometric telemedicine to procedures and interactions that meet the standard of care in optometry. It clarifies the transfer of ownership of an optometric practice upon the death of the owner and offers the heirs a 1-year time period to sell or dissolve the practice. That is because in Nevada we require an optometrist to own an optometric practice and no one else, so that the care is dictated by the doctor providing it, not some outside entity who might not have the patient's best interest in mind. It provides the standards of supervision of interns and residents who have not yet obtained a license to practice in Nevada. Unfortunately, we've had instances in Nevada where we've had interns at a practice left on their own without the doctor who was designated as their overseer. They just left them. So we need some sort of structure so that that patient is still being protected. It reduces the initial license fee for veterans by 1/2. It allows the board to require applicants to be fingerprinted before practicing optometry in Nevada, not requiring it outright, but allowing us to require it if we decide to do that. Allowing the board to issue a citation as an additional disciplinary tool as recommended by the Attorney General's office, not the district attorney office as your materials have written. It reinforces the concept that the doctor must be able to schedule, practice, prescribe, and treat as they see fit without overbearing direction from a management service provider. And it includes optometrists as eligible laboratory directors under CLIA. That's been an oversight for a while. We've been allowed to be the sample collectors for CLIA. We haven't been allowed to be the medical facility director for CLIA. And that creates a conflict of interest if we have to get an MD to sign off so that we can do tear lab or inflammatory, which are very simple tear sample tests for certain conditions. Then there creates a relationship between the two where you pat my back, I'll pat yours. If we are our own medical directors for CLIA, then we get around that relationship. We ask that you amend and do pass. The amendment is 3544 that was released yesterday. Do you guys have any questions for us?
Thank you for your presentation, but before we go forward, have you submitted an amendment, Assemblyman?
As far as changing the words to...
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Greg Koenig.
Thank you.
For the record. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was not aware of the change that needed to be done as far as Attorney General versus District Attorney.
That was only, Mariah Smith for the record, that was only in the bullet points that I put together and submitted last night as the overview for the bill. It has nothing to do with the amendment that was 3544 that was submitted yesterday.
So yes, we have. I just was thinking we might have to do another one. Greg Koenig for the record, but yes, we have submitted the amendment.
Do you know who did you submit it to the committee manager? Was it a personal amendment? Because we don't have any amendments.
I am not sure. For Greg Koenig for the record. What do we have in front of us?
As far, I'm not, Mariah Smith for the record, I'm not totally sure of the process, but I have a printed amendment in front of me, 3544, that was produced April 11th, 2023.
Proposed amendment 3544 is.
Can you just resubmit that to the committee manager after our hearing today?
Sorry about that.
Oh,
Yes,
no, don't
I'm
apologize.
Greg
No problem.
Koenig for the record. I'm still kind of a newbie and don't all the way know what's going on. So indulge me, please. Thank you.
That's all of us, no problem at all. So my next question is, you said that a couple lines changed, which removed the 2/3. Which lines are those?
It was section, Mariah Smith for the record, it was section 26, which was going to require the owners of a practice to resubmit the list of owners to the practice every 5 years with a fee associated with it.
And we've just, Greg Koenig for the record, we've just removed that from the bill.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions? Assemblyman Yurick?
Thank you, Chair. In light of, we've heard a lot of telehealth bills, including one big one in our last hearing. I don't mean this to be snarky at all, but I want to just, if you can confirm that, for example, in your recommendation for telehealth here, is there anything in there that would say, for example, allow a non-Nevada optometrist, non-licensed Nevada optometrist who is registered here that may, for example, be licensed in Puerto Rico to be able to practice telemedicine here under your bill?
Mariah Smith, no. They need to be licensed in Nevada.
And the intent is, by not having anything in here at all, this is happening right now. There are doctors from out of state doing complete exams over the internet because we don't have anything here saying that they can't. So by us putting down some parameters of what telemedicine looks like in optometry, we're hoping that that can stop that. Is that correct?
I would say that there aren't any people remotely who are trying to practice in Nevada right now. I do think that there is a new branch of teleoptometry that is a little bit different than how you classically think about telemedicine, where the patient's remote and they call in the doctor. There's a branch of optometry that's emerging called doctor remote telemedicine. It's not a part of our bill, but that is something that needs to be addressed upcoming. They're attempting to do a synchronous telemedicine exam via teleconferencing with equipment that's operated remotely by the doctor who's at some other place. The patient still needs to physically show up to the exam room. So I believe that's the only way that a practitioner who's outside of Nevada state lines would be able to do a comprehensive exam at this point. But that's not part of our bill. Our bill is Nevada licensed optometrists providing care to a Nevada resident. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Assemblywoman Backus?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to make sure, because I get a little nervous when a statement is said that if a doctor from out of state is doing telehealth in the state of Nevada and we don't have like a provision for it, and outside of like the executive orders that were put in place during COVID, my understanding would be that provider would be practicing in violation of Nevada law, because Nevada law would only allow those to practice in Nevada who are licensed in Nevada right now. And I just want to make sure that's the way things are going, right?
Mariah Smith, yes, ma'am.
Any additional questions? I don't see any. We will move to support testimony of Assembly Bill 432. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support? Please state and spell your name for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jonathan Mather, M-A-T-H-E-R. I'm an optometrist here in Carson City. I've been practicing here for 10 years. And on behalf of the Nevada Optometric Association, a group of optometrists statewide in Nevada, we are in support of the state board, their bill, the amendment, and the language as it currently exists. Thank you for your time.
Hi, committee members, chairwoman. Isaac Tenorio with Strategy 260, today representing Churchill County. We urge the committee to support this bill. This bill will save rural Nevadans time, money, and a long commute. And we think it's important for rural Nevadans to get services that they need. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in support? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 432? I don't see anyone walking up. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. If you'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 432, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 432. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 432? I don't see anyone walking up. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you'd like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 432, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in neutral. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 432? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 432?
If you'd like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 432, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Assemblyman, would you like to give some final remarks?
Thank you, Assemblyman Greg Koenig, for the record. Short and sweet as promised. You guys weren't quite as mean as I was expecting. Thank you so much. If you could, I would just urge support of this bill. Like I said, it would really make a difference to the rural Nevada, and it's going to be passed for all of Nevada, and Nevadans throughout the state can benefit, but it's an extra benefit for those of my constituents who live hours and hours away from health care. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 432. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 434, which revises provisions governing prescription medication. Assemblywoman, you may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. This is quite the hot committee room today. Man, it is an honor, though, to be before the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor, and thank you so much for this opportunity to present Assembly Bill 343. I'm going to have my co-presenters introduce themselves, and we'll talk a little bit about the bill. If that's okay with you, Madam Chair, with your permission, I'll have them introduce themselves. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Steve Messenger. I'm the Policy Director with the Nevada Primary Care Association.
And Tita Watkins, Director of Pharmacy from Northern Nevada Hopes here in Reno.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. We're going to talk about Assembly Bill 343, which revises provisions governing discounted prescription drugs purchased through the 340B program.
Assemblywoman, it's 434.
Is it? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at 430B. Okay, how about this? Let's start over. Hi, I'm Angie Taylor, and I am proud to represent Assembly District 27. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. we are here to present Assembly Bill 434, for the record, 434, which revises provisions governing discounted prescription drugs purchased through the 340B program. Make that very, very clear. Steve, you got it? You good? All right. Let me get, just for information and to make sure there's you have the background information on the federal 340B drug pricing program. This program was established in Section 340B of the Public Health Service Act, which requires pharmaceutical manufacturers to provide discounts on prescription drugs purchased by so-called covered entities. These include federally qualified health centers, certain hospitals, disease-specific providers, for an example, for HIV, and other safety net providers. Federally qualified health centers, often as abbreviated as FQHCs, are federally funded nonprofit health centers or clinics that serve medically underserved areas and populations, and Northern Nevada Hopes is one of them, and so proud to have them presenting with me on today. The program discounts are identical in dollar value to the rebates that manufacturers are required to provide under the Medicaid drug rebate program. Additionally, the program allows covered entities to charge health insurers, except Medicaid, the market price on these discounted drugs. The generated revenue from the difference, or the spread, between the discounted prices and the market price supports needed programs and services for low-income, uninsured, and underinsured patients who are served by these covered entities. So the federally that's a big one. The FQHCs are able to buy drugs at a discounted price, but to be reimbursed at the retail price, and then the spread, the difference in that, generates money for programs and services for underserved communities. And Northern Nevada Hopes, again, is an example of that. Congress created this program, the 340B program, back in 1992 to allow safety net providers the same access to discounted prescription drugs that the Medicaid drug rebate law passed in 1990 allowed for state Medicaid programs. So the same discount for those organizations serving those communities. Prior to the creation of the 340B, the majority of health centers were unable to provide pharmacy services. But due to the lower prices available now under the 340B program, the vast majority of health centers can now provide pharmaceutical services, a much-needed service in those communities. Additionally, savings generated under the 340B enable health centers to invest and support many other programs and services that they may otherwise be unable to financially sustain, such as ensuring that low-income, uninsured, and underinsured patients can afford prescriptions. A current challenge for the FQHCs and other 340B providers is a range of practices referred to as discriminatory contracting. So there are several problems with this. Covered entities contract with pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. They're private insurers and Medicaid, private insurers and Medicaid managed care organizations to manage or receive the reimbursement for their prescription drug benefit plans. This includes prescription drugs purchased through the 340B program. They are offering covered entities contracts that effectively transfer the 340B discount savings from the covered entities and their underserved patients to themselves. Other common discriminatory practices from PBMs, insurers, and managed care organizations, or MCOs, I think that's enough acronyms for you on today, they're refusing to cover drug purchases under the 340B either directly or by refusing to allow 340B pharmacies to participate in the networks, and charging more than fair market value or seeking profit sharing, because remember, they buy at a lower rate and can get it reimbursed at a higher rate, right? Or they're charging more than fair market share, or let's split the difference or share the spread, I guess, if you will, in exchange for services involving 340B drugs. At least 23 states across the nation have passed legislation protecting 340B savings for safety net providers. However, in Nevada, there is no law to protect these practices. So covered entities must often accept the lower reimbursement rates, largely impacting their ability to retain savings on these drugs. And then remember, without these these savings, these health centers must reconsider programs and services that they're able to provide for low-income patients and programs that use their support. This past interim period, the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Health and Human Services considered and passed several recommendations related to pharmaceutical drug pricing. Recommendations made by the committee relating to the 340B program were transferred into this bill in an effort to end discriminatory contracting in our state. So in a nutshell, Assembly Bill 434 addresses HIV treatment and the 340B program. The Division of Public and Behavioral Health, DHHS, administers the Nevada Medication Assistance Program, commonly known, one more acronym, as NMAP, also known as the AIDS Drug Assistance Program, which is authorized under Part B of the federal Ryan White HIV/AIDS program. It aims to support low-income individuals living with AIDS or HIV who possess limited or no coverage from private insurance, Medicaid, or Medicare. Another entity, Ryan White Clinics, provides support and is among the 340B covered entities. These covered providers also offer needed prescription drugs to individuals living with HIV in Nevada. Both NMAP and the Ryan White Clinics can claim rebates or receive discounts when giving HIV prescription drugs to their patients. Now here is the tricky part. A patient can be enrolled in both NMAP and in the Ryan White Clinic, but the rebate or discount for HIV drugs can only be claimed by one entity for such a patient, not for both. So apparently there's been some confusion as to which provider can receive the rebate or the discounted price, and this bill, the intention of this bill, will provide clarity by providing Ryan White Clinics with these discounts. With your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to just walk through a couple of sections of the bill. Sections 1, 3, 6, and 7 prohibit the pharmacy benefit managers, or the PBMs, and certain health providers or carriers from discriminating against covered entity that participates in the 340B program to purchase drugs at a discounted rate, or a pharmacy that contracts with such an entity with regard to reimbursement. Secondly, from taking certain actions to limit the ability of such an entity or pharmacy to receive the full benefit of participating in that program. And 3, excluding such an entity or a pharmacy from an insurance network because the entity or pharmacy participates in the program. All of these we call the discriminatory practices I mentioned a little bit earlier. And also it will restrict the ability of a person to receive 340B drug, or taking certain other actions to limit the participation of an entity or pharmacy in the program. In other words, taking away the benefit of these local health organizations from benefiting from the program. That's what those sections do. And then sections 8 and 9 prohibits DHHS program, or NMAP, from denying a request from a covered provider or contract pharmacy to participate in the network of the program in certain circumstances, or engaging in certain discrimination against a covered provider or a contract. In other words, it ends the discriminatory practices. The NMAP must take certain actions and refrain from certain activity to ensure that a covered provider in the 340B program purchases drugs at a discounted rate, or a pharmacy that contracts with such a provider to receive the full benefit of participating in the program. Again, this is what allows these organizations to provide those services in the underserved community. So thank you. I know that could be as clear as mud. That's why I'm here with some experts to answer some questions for you, and hopefully we can provide this clarity and clear this up and allow these organizations to continue to deliver these really, really important services in our underserved community. Okay. You ready to go? Go right ahead, and then we'll stand for questions.
Steve Messenger for the record. I'd like to start by thanking the Chair Marzola and the committee, also the members of Interim Health who vetted this bill and voted unanimously to request it. Chair Peters of Assembly Health and Human Services, who ended up with this bill this session, even though it's not in her committee. And of course, to Assemblywoman Taylor, who looks like she's gunning for my job with that excellent summary she gave. Just a quick idea on who you're serving as far as our FQHCs. We served in 2021, the last year we had data, more than 32,000 uninsured patients. That's all got to be paid for some way, and it gets paid for with our federal grant and with the 340B dollars. We serve nearly 46,000 Medicaid patients. So these savings are going to our most underserved Nevadans. 70% were racial or ethnic minorities. 91% had income of under 200% of the federal poverty level. 27% are best served in a language other than English. More than a quarter of our services are not in English. And our clinics also serve rural areas that don't have, a lot of other access to healthcare in Elko County, Austin, Amargosa Valley, and Mesquite. Just to retouch on a couple of things that Assemblywoman Taylor did a great job putting in full context. Again, your vocabulary that you're looking for here is the covered entity. That's the federal term for the clinics that are allowed to receive 340B dollars. And we rattled off a little bit of a list of them, but particularly the critical access hospitals, the Title X clinics, your STD clinics, so like your public health authorities are getting access to these kinds of dollars, and then of course the Ryan White clinics. Again, the 4 simple things that this bill does: it requires payers to reimburse at no less than the national wholesale drug acquisition cost. It requires 340B reimbursement for drugs dispensed in a contract pharmacy. It prohibits insurers from steering patients away from a 340B pharmacy. And it settles the question of which between the state HIV insurance assistance program and Ryan White HIV providers is able to capture the 340B revenue by placing that right with the providers and settling that question. We also have Tita Watkins from Northern Nevada Hopes to give a brief statement on what this looks like on the ground in the clinic.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tita Watkins, Director of Pharmacy at Northern Nevada Hopes. It is a FQHC, a federally qualified health center in Reno. And I've been a pharmacist in the state of Nevada for the last 17 years. But today I do come to you as an advocate for my patients. Currently, pharmacy benefit managers can force patients to use their own mail-order pharmacies to increase their profits and exclude 340B covered entities and their pharmacies from their networks entirely, taking away the right for patients to choose where they may receive their medications. This can cause barriers to care, such as transportation and inadvertent costs to the patient. Patients have also been told that they can only use a mail-order pharmacy or a specialty pharmacy for the HIV medications. Some pharmacy benefit managers will not even allow our pharmacy to mail out prescriptions to our patients, thus restricting access to their medications. With the revenue generated by 340B, our pharmacy is able to provide additional support such as mail, delivery, adherence packaging, and medication therapy management at no cost to our patients. The 340B program also allows Northern Nevada Hopes to provide wraparound care for our patients, which include housing assistance, substance use treatment, sexual health and testing, and case management. NMAP is also a covered entity, but the intent of the 340B program is to help Ryan White providers like Hopes to stretch their financial resources to reach more financially vulnerable HIV patients and deliver comprehensive services such as HIV testing, prevention, treatment, HIV education, and behavioral health. Allowing NMAP to claim 340B discounts will eliminate these comprehensive services from Ryan White providers and would have a negative impact on patient care. If pharmacy benefit managers continue to lower reimbursement rates for covered entities like Hopes, Northern Nevada Hopes would not be able to provide critical wraparound quality care to the underserved residents of Northern Nevada who are in dire need of assistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In the committee, we stand for questions and just want to note that there are over 200,000 Nevadans that stand in the gap, that we stand in the gap for. In terms of providing this service. And we're coming before you to help clean this up and make sure that the funds from the 340B prescription program, the savings go where they're intended to go so that these services and supports, these wraparound services can continue to be provided.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, and thank you for bringing such an important bill forward. Committee members, are there any questions? Assemblywoman Kasama? Oh, Assemblywoman Hardy?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Thank you for bringing this bill. Since my time in the legislature here, I've learned a lot about prescription drugs and all of the complexities that go into this and learned about this particular program, which I think is amazing. So I just wondered if you could share, you talked about the number of patients and people that it helps. Could you just share like the dollar amount that we're talking about that are available to these clinics and entities to help these Nevadans?
And just make sure
Steve
you
Messenger for the record.
Yep. Madam Chair, may we go direct or through you to the Assemblywoman? Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assemblywoman Hardy, we know from a national estimate of a survey that surveyed all of the federally qualified health centers, that survey revealed that it was about 16% larger on average than their federal grant. So, you know, all I've got is an estimate for you, but we know that our federal grant is worth about $26 million a year. So for our program, just the federally qualified health centers, we estimate it to be about $31 million a year. Tina may have more to add because that's going to look different in a Ryan White clinic than it does at an average FQHC.
In Northern Nevada, Tita Watkins and for Northern Nevada Hopes, and actually our budget report just came out, and it does for FQHCs, we are required to kind of show where all the funding and grant money goes. So I would be more than happy to send that out to you so you could see where it is. But again, with just the grantee money and not having the 340B revenue, clinics like us cannot operate the additional services without that funding.
And any information that you provide, can you please provide it to the community, the committee secretary? It's been a long day. Committee members, any additional questions? I don't see any.
Just if I may, Madam Chair, there's also an amendment I want to make sure it's on that list to draw your attention to if you have not had an opportunity to view that as well. And if there are questions on that, then we can answer as well. Steve will be able to answer that as well. Okay.
We do have the amendment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will now open up for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 434. And we will start here in Carson City. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Victor Salcido, and I am a proud team member at Community Health Alliance, which is a federally qualified health center that operates 6 different health clinics in Washoe County. You heard a lot today about federally qualified health centers, and there's a lot that goes into that designation. But for the purposes of this testimony, what I can tell you is we offer primary care regardless of a person's ability to pay for that care or not. That means we do not turn a single person away, whether they're insured, whether they can pay, whether we never hear from them again. That being said, we are not a free clinic, meaning we do have to make ends meet somehow. And the way we do that is really through 2 streams of revenue. It's federal grants, and it's this program we're talking about here today. The other thing of note is what this program allows us to do is offer all the other auxiliary services that are so needed in our communities. For example, at Community Health Alliance, we offer mental and behavioral health services. Again, when we offer those services, we cannot turn anyone away for an inability to pay. We offer a program that's a food prescription program. What that means is for many of our patients who suffer from diabetes, not only do they come and get their medicine and health checks to treat their symptoms, but we are able to offer them a food prescription, and they could go down the hall at many of our clinics and receive a bag of groceries that is meant to treat and help them with their diabetes. None of those services are revenue generators, right? So the only way we are able to offer those services is through this program. So joining 22 other states that have already put these protections in place would allow us to then plan fiscally for the next budget years and forward, knowing that we have this stream of revenue and are able to offer programs such as this. I thank you for your time.
For the record, my name is Netochi Adeolokun. It's Netochi Adeolokun, and I'm Director of Clinical Pharmacy Services at Community Health Alliance. We're a federally qualified health center here in Reno. As a pharmacist at a federally qualified health center, I see uninsured patients receive guideline-recommended medications for affordable pricing. For example, a medication for treating blood clots like Xarelto. Xarelto could be like $500 at a regular pharmacy, but our patients can receive Xarelto for less than $15 to treat their blood clots or whatever it may be. These 340B savings, like everyone has said, they're reinvested back into our organization to support our clinic. If insurance companies continue to dictate prescription reimbursement, it will be a barrier to care for our uninsured population. Thank you for your time, and please support AB 434. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Faith Whittier. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Northern Nevada Hopes. I'm a board-certified obstetrician and gynecologist. I'm here today as an obstetrician and an advocate to speak on behalf of our at-risk moms and babies that rely on our discounted 340B medications and the savings from the program that we use to get these moms connected to early prenatal care. Unfortunately, in this country, we are seeing rates of sexually transmitted diseases rising, with more than 2.5 million cases of STDs reported in 2021, jumping 7% in 1 year, with the highest reported cases in our youth, ages 15 to 24, that make up almost half of the new STD cases each year. The state of Nevada ranked first for primary and secondary syphilis and number 4 for babies born with congenital syphilis. In 2021, syphilis caused 220 stillbirths and infant deaths, a devastating disease that is 100% preventable. Also, moms preventing with co-infections such as syphilis and HIV, we are seeing more. This has placed a heavy reliance on our 340B program in this fight to get these moms and babies connected to treatment. Many of these at-risk moms are suffering from substance abuse, homelessness, and a multitude of factors that keep them disconnected from our healthcare system. Numbers from the CDC show the number of pregnant women with opioid addictions presenting in labor quadrupled from 1999 to 2014. And we all know that the opioid fentanyl epidemic has only worsened. Losing this vital 340B funding, we will see more untreated HIV-positive moms with transmission rates to their newborns between 15 and 45%, instead of the 1 to 2% transmission rate we can achieve with these affordable access to these medications. This is a battle we cannot afford to lose in the state of Nevada, with some of the highest STD rates across our country. I ask for your support in maintaining the 340B program and the life-saving access it provides to our moms and newborns in fighting preventable diseases and saving lives. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeannie Pulsifer. I'm a doctor of pharmacy and a practicing clinical pharmacist at Nevada Health Centers. We operate a in-house 340B pharmacy here in Carson City. Nevada Health Centers has been around for over 45 years and is the largest FQHC in Nevada. Each year, we serve approximately 50,000 patients with 18 health centers in urban, rural, and frontier communities throughout Nevada, which includes 3 mobile units and 3 in-house pharmacies. Nevada Health Centers also has 6 rural dispensary sites, 1 dispensary to serve the homeless, and 4 clinical pharmacists integrated into patient care teams. We have 48 contract pharmacies throughout Nevada to help provide access to patients, and we currently offer mail-out services to patients with limited pharmacy access. The 340B program allows Nevada Health Centers to purchase discounted outpatient drugs to reduce the price of medications to our patients and enhance patient compliance. Annual 340B revenue for Nevada Health Centers is almost $8 million, and it's reinvested to support affordable medications, expanded pharmacy access, clinical pharmacy services, including chronic disease management, diabetes education and management, HIV, PrEP, and hepatitis C treatment. Expanded access to services such as preventative and restorative dental and mobile medical dental and mammography programs, and we offer a sliding scale fee and more. Nevada Health Centers has already seen a $1.5 million impact due to the contract pharmacy restrictions. Manufacturer restrictions mean patients are experiencing higher drug prices for certain medications when purchased at contract pharmacies. The PBMs and insurers are reducing reimbursement to 340B pharmacies siphoning 340B savings and revenue away from health centers and underserved patients. For example, the pharmaceutical manufacturer GSK started restrictions starting in May. That means losing access to 340B discounted inhalers for uninsured patients at our contract pharmacies. An example of this is an Advair inhaler, which is used to treat patients with COPD and asthma. And that patient would normally get that for $21 at our contract pharmacy. Am I out of time? Okay, I'll finish really quick. That same medication is going to cost over $500 for the same patient after these restrictions go into effect. So we appreciate the opportunity to speak about 340B and encourage the support of AB 434. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Joan Hall, representing Nevada Rural Hospital Partners. We have 13 critical access hospitals, and they're affiliated 17 RHCs. We provide care to only 10% of Nevada's population, but in 90% of its landmass. We're also an eligible provider for the 340B program and would like to thank Assemblywoman Taylor and the Primary Care Association for bringing this very important bill to us. And we urge your support.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Liz McMiniman, Retail Association of Nevada. I wasn't going to speak on this bill, but after hearing what the FQHCs are experiencing with the PBMs, again, as all of you know, I'm a big advocate for some type of reform on this. Prescription benefit manipulators that we have in our state, and listening to the stories about these patients that are so desperately need this medical help, and that these people are, these entities are standing in the way, really bothers me. We see it in the practice of pharmacy, in the retail end too, which leads to some independent pharmacies not being able to provide the care to their patients that they need in the state of Nevada. So I come in support of the FQHCs in getting some type of PBM reform this session. Otherwise, we have to wait two more years before we see some kind of relief. So I thank this committee. I'm going to keep this brief, and thank you for doing the hard work, and I thank the Assemblywoman for bringing this forward.
Is it evening yet? No. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Adler with Silver State Government Relations, proudly representing First Med Health and Wellness, an FQHC in Clark County, with clinics in Assembly Districts 10, 20, and 7. And CEO Angela Quinn would like to acknowledge her colleagues and say that First Med provides similar healthcare services due to the 340B. But what I would summarize is the 340B resources give First Med bandwidth. They have been asked by the Department of Family Services in Clark County to be the healthcare provider to foster children in Clark County, and that takes additional resources to do that properly. They were asked by Clark County Social Services to apply for a HUD grant to provide healthcare and housing to medically fragile individuals, and they can do that kind of extra work because of these additional resources. I already mentioned today that they have joined hands with William B. Ryrie Hospital out in Ely, providing psychiatric and children's and adults mental health care not otherwise available. They don't make money doing that. They see that as their mission. So they appreciate these flexible resources and urge you to pass AB 434. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nancy Cadigan. I am a clinical pharmacist, and I work for the Washoe Tribal Health Center, and we understand that this is a very important bill. It's going to help all of the underserved patients throughout the state of Nevada, and it's also going to help the money to go where it's supposed to go, which is to help the underserved and not line the pockets of the insurance companies and the pharmacy benefit managers. Thank you for your help.
Hello, my name is Chinelo Wogbo, CHINELO NWAOGBO. I am a family nurse practitioner and the director of nursing for the Washoe Tribal Health Center, located here in Gardnerville, Nevada. And I'm in support of the AB 434. The 340B drug pricing program is designed to decrease outpatient prescription drugs costs for qualified healthcare organization. The key advantage of this program is the support it provides for the underprivileged population, particularly those receiving care at the Washoe Tribal Health Center. I would touch base on the advantage of the AB 434 bill for these individuals and the positive influence it has on the healthcare facility. First, it enhances affordability of the medication. Second, expansion of healthcare services. Third, it also boosts medication compliance and reinforces community health services. The AB 434 has played a crucial role in enhancing medication affordability and healthcare service quality for underprivileged population by making medication more accessible and enabling facilities to reinvest in their services. I urge that you grant this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in support? I don't see anyone. We will move to Las Vegas. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, for allowing me to testify on behalf of our FQAC here in Las Vegas. My name is Roxana Valeton, for the records, Roxana Valeton. And I'm the CEO of First Person Care Clinic, a covered entity located here in Las Vegas. And I'm here to voice our full support for Assembly Bill 434 and to share with you the impact that the 340B drug discount program has had on our community health center. The 340B program has been critical in helping our safety net facility pay for free or discounted medical services, transportation services to medical appointments for our patients, food assistance programs for our homeless patients, medical education, and more. This program expands the reach of community-based health providers and directly improves patient care. I would like to share with you the story of one of our patients who had been receiving biweekly medical infusion of IVIG without having to worry about her expensive and unaffordable insurance co-payments for over 6 years now. Without this infusion, she will lose the ability to walk, and eventually she will lose her ability to breathe. First Person has been her main resource for medical care for almost everything. Not only our dental program, our infusion center, our food bank have all been instrumental in her continued health and well-being. She expressed gratitude for the incredible people who work at our clinic and believes that she will not have survived this long without the ability to participate in the 340B program discounted rates. The financial stability of the 340B program is paramount to the care of our underserved communities. Assembly Bill 434 could help to protect the integrity of this program and, in turn, safeguard the ability of community-based health providers like ours to continue to deliver high-quality care to those who need it most. We urge you to support this bill as well, and thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 434? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 434, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Bleak, Toddbleak. I'm the manager of pharmacy services for the Southern Nevada Community Health Center, a division of the Southern Nevada Health District. As a federally qualified health center, we offer clinics for primary care, HIV care, sexual health, and family planning services. The savings we realized from the 340B program supports the health center in providing services for the uninsured and underserved in our community. It has supported our health center in three key areas: provision of low-cost medications for the uninsured, implementation of mental health services, and the expansion of our HIV treatment and prevention services. We are using the 340B program to support our mission of the health center to provide health care to the underserved in our community in accordance with the intent of 340B legislation. Assembly Bill 434 protects this work by ensuring we receive the same reimbursement that other providers receive for the same service. I request the committee support Assembly Bill 434 as amended, so our health center and other 340B providers are supported by the program to continue this work. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Adam Porath, ADAMPORATH, representing the Nevada Society of Health System Pharmacists. In my day job, I'm the Vice President of Pharmacy at Renown Health, and Renown Regional Medical Center is a 340B covered entity as a disproportionate share hospital. It's a designation given by the federal government for a hospital taking care of a disproportionate share of Medicaid and indigent patients. There was a question earlier as far as the magnitude of the benefit for Renown Regional Medical Center in calendar year 2022. The benefit was $29 million. As was mentioned previously, in addition to DSHs, the 340B program supports all of the critical access hospitals, community health centers, health departments, Indian health clinics, and Ryan White clinics throughout our state. The savings on the medications purchased through the program are essential to literally keep the doors open at many of these facilities. Recently, several commercial payers and associated PBMs have made moves to limit the potential benefit to 340B covered entities by reimbursing less for medications that are covered under the program and dispense as outpatient prescriptions to their members. Additionally, and somewhat unique to hospitals, payers and PBMs have limited access to particular medications like chemotherapy and other infusions, prohibiting 340B covered entities from using 340B meds for their members. Instead, they require that their members may only have access to these medications through their external specialty pharmacies and expect that 340B facilities like ours would administer these medications for them. This is a process known as white bagging, and it not only short circuits the typical inventory controls that hospitals have, but also creates potential patient safety issues because we can't use our typical bedside barcoding technology that's tied to charging for medications. Ultimately, just want to say that we support AB 434. I think it's a great step to help preserve the original intent of the 340B program. The covered entities when we're taking care of commercially insured patients. Similar legislation was recently introduced in Congress to protect 340B Act with bipartisan support.
If you can please wrap up your testimony.
Will do.
Thank you.
We support the bill as written. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We'll move to testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 434. Is there anyone here in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition? Oh, did I say Vegas? Oh, here in Carson City.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for your time. My name is Marissa Schwartz, Marissa Schwartz, and I am here on behalf of the Nevada Association of Health Plans, a statewide trade association, representing 10 member companies providing commercial health insurance and government programs to Nevadans. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me testify in what I'm calling friendly opposition of this bill, AB 434. While some of our members had a recent conversation with the proponents of the bill, we did express to them that we have concerns both on the Medicaid and the commercial side on the potential impacts of this legislation. On the Medicaid side, there is current 340B guidance from the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy, which is appropriate and a good way for the state to realize the savings from the 340B pricing. There should be discussion before reversing the careful policy that the DHCFP implemented, and which would regulate 340B discounts in Nevada. Unfortunately, this legislation does have the potential to open the door to more risks, including higher net drug spending, more contract pharmacies, and attendant misidentification claims. Today's current setup through the DHCFP works well to keep the 340B program regulated and eliminate the risk of duplicate discounts, diversion, and rebate invoice disputes. We would appreciate further discussion with the FQHCs, see, I told you, it's a lot of acronyms, and other stakeholders on this bill, and we are happy to make available our plans to pharmacists to others who are at the table and regularly deal with 340B. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 434? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in opposition?
Chair, we have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral position of Assembly Bill 434? I don't see anyone walking up. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, we have no callers in neutral at this time.
Assemblywoman, final remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the committee again, we just really appreciate this opportunity to present AB 434 to the committee, and just want to remind you of what's going on in our country, that we're all anticipating the unwinding of Medicare. That could potentially leave 200,000 Nevadans again that may have a coverage gap, and we're asking that Nevada be join 24 other states to help close this gap. This is a way to provide critical prescription drugs to the underserved, and here's the best part: at no cost. At no cost. So we stand ready to continue to speak with the opposition to hopefully get them to a place of being neutral. But we think that this is the way to go forward to protect this program. The intention of this program is to provide this service, and we're asking for your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, for such an important bill. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 434. I will now open up for public comment. Please address your remarks to issues that fall within the jurisdiction of this committee. Public comment is 2 minutes per person. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You may begin when you're ready.
My name is John Eppolito. I'm with Protect Nevada Children. For 5 sessions, we at Protect Nevada Children have been trying to get legislation to protect the data and future of Nevada children. A little while ago, I got some bad news. AB 320, which was to be heard in this committee, will not be getting a hearing. It would have done more to protect Nevada children under the age of 18 on the internet than any other state in the country except California. California just passed a bill like Nevada's AB 320. Entities like the Retail Association, the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce, and of course Google feel AB 320 could hurt their members or their own profits. We don't agree, but since the bill won't be getting a hearing, we won't get to present our side of the issue. The internet is the only place left where children are treated as adults, i.e. not protected. Think about it. Children can't go into bars, gamble in casinos, see certain movies, and many other things. Yet on the internet, everyone is equal. One example, children can use any device connected to the internet, go to Pornhub.com and watch pornographic videos. Actually, this school year, some elementary school students in Washoe County School District were doing exactly this on their district-issued devices. Protect Nevada Children has been fighting for the children's safety on the internet and companies like Google. This session, Google has 11 paid lobbyists here in Nevada. Google offers free education software for school children. By now, many people know why Google's education software is free to school districts. It's because they're paid with student data. There have been numerous lawsuits against Google for how they use student data. So I ask you all, who is here to lobby for the children of Nevada? We believe Protect Nevada Children is the closest thing the children of Nevada have to a lobbyist. You can find 1,500 of us on Facebook at Protect Nevada Children. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Or your public comment. Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to provide public comment? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to provide public comment? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, the public line is open and working, and there are no callers at this time.
Thank you. This concludes our meeting for today. Our next meeting will be Friday, April 14th. At the call of the chair.